Chapter 82. Nanheng Snake Lord left with his wife dejectedly, not attracting any attention. Meng Tianlang, who was embedded in the mountain, was carried out. His entire body was covered in blood, his hair was in a mess, and he looked extremely miserable. If not for the rise and fall of his chest, one would have thought that he was already dead. One of the generals asked nervously, "General Meng, are you all right?" Meng Tianlang raised his head with great difficulty. His face was covered in blood, and his eyes revealed shock and horror. "I've been tricked. How was this a competition of patience? This kid was purposely trying to make him relax." At this moment, Meng Tianlang wished that he was already dead. Thinking about becoming Zhou Xuanji's slave, he spat out a mouthful of blood onto the general in front of him. Zhou Xuanji had already seen Meng Tianlang's miserable state. He smiled and said, "I'm going to have another sword slave." Northern Sword Valiant grinned and said, "It should be Dao Nu." Zhou Qingxin and Princess Xuanya were both curious. What did Zhou Xuanji mean? Zhao Congjian's relationship with Zhou Qingxin was not bad, so he explained it to him. When the two great Zhou royal family members heard this, their expressions became strange. If Meng Tianlang became Zhou Xuanji's servant, the Emperor of Great Zhou, Emperor Yan of Zhou, would be furious. After all, Emperor Yan of Zhou had high hopes for Meng Tianlang. Zhou Qingxin wanted to remind Zhou Xuanji, but he felt that it was not the right time to make sarcastic remarks, so he could only hold it in. Soon, Great Zhou's generals and princes helped Meng Tianlang to the top of the mountain. All of them looked at Zhou Xuanji furiously and wanted to tear him into pieces. Meng Tianlang stood up with difficulty. He looked at Zhou Xuanji and said with gritted teeth, "Shameless brat. You tricked me." Zhou Xuanji said calmly, "How?" "You." Meng Tianlang wanted to say something, but he did not know where to start. Zhou Xuanji only used the furious ape sword, and no one else helped him. Everything was within the agreement, but he was so aggrieved. The injuries all over his body told him that he had really lost. Zhou Xuanji purposely frowned and said unhappily, "Meng Tianlang, you want to go back on your word?" In his heart, he was already rolling with laughter. It felt so good. "Who asked you to look down on me? In the future, I'll make you follow behind me and call me master every day." Meng Tianlang was exasperated and didn't know what to say. At this moment, he noticed that Xiao Jinghong was frowning. He was instantly enraged and roared, "I'm a man of my word. Just you wait. After this great Zhou's heaven selection, I'll resign from my position as a general and work like a slave for you. Go." The surrounding generals and princes jumped in fright when they heard that. Meng Tianlang wanted to resign from his position as a general and join Sword God Zhou. They hurriedly asked as they supported Meng Tianlang away. To the generals, Meng Tianlang was a rare genius on the battlefield. For the princes, if they could rope in Meng Tianlang, they would be closer to the throne. After they left, Zhou Qingxin couldn't help but sigh. "General Meng, a single mistake brings everlasting sorrow." He muttered in his heart. Wasn't Meng Tianlang very smart? Why did he suddenly become stupid? He even dared to compete in such a bet. Now he had failed miserably. Zhou Xuanji smiled. After the pill entered his body, he had the strength to stand up straight. It seemed that he would have to be more careful when using the furious ape sword in the future. He didn't want to ruin himself. Too strong. Too strong. Fang Junshin clenched his fists. He was so excited that he could not control himself, as though he was injected with chicken blood. After Zhou Qingxin chatted with Zhou Xuanji for a while, he left with Princess Xuanya, who was in a love-struck state. As the spectators left, the cliff quieted down again. Little Jiang Shui wrapped her arms around his neck and said meaningfully, "The way that princess looked at you just now, it was as though flowers were blooming." Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said unpleasantly, "Have you forgotten who I am?" Little Jiang Shui heard him and realized that he was right. Zhou Xuanji was also a prince of Great Zhou, which was equivalent to Princess Xuanya's younger brother. She immediately beamed with joy and went to feed the dragon eagles. Xiao Jinghong walked over and took a deep breath. That slash just now was definitely not the power of an earth-grade sword technique. "Revered teacher, can you teach me?" Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "Learn the dual sword wills first. Haste makes waste." There will be plenty of time and opportunities to learn other sword techniques in the future. Xiao Jinghong nodded, as though he was enlightened. In the next month, the news of sword god Zhou severely injuring Meng Tianlang, with a single strike swept across the immortal Sundering Mountain and the entire Great Zhou. Meng Tianlang's fame had been in the top 50 of Great Zhou's reputation, ranking for a long time, and he was ranked second on Great Zhou's hero ranking board. He was a sharp blade that could protect Great Zhou's future, and even Emperor Yan of Zhou praised him. Such a powerful cultivator could not even block a single strike from sword god Zhou, and almost died. In an instant, the name of sword god Zhou was spread like wildfire. He had even surpassed sword monarch Xiao Jinghong, Zhou Xuanji and the others, who were in the immortal Sundering Mountain range, did not know any of this. Zhou Xuanji continued to cultivate day after day. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Congjian, Bei Xiao Wangjian, and Huang Lianqin trained even harder after witnessing Zhou Xuanji's slash. Little Jiang Shui was also trying her best to internalize qi, charging towards the enlightening state. As Fang Junxing watched them practice, he would also follow suit. As time passed, his understanding of the sword Dao also increased. On this day, Zhou Xuanji easily broke through to enlightening level 8. He was getting closer to the inner pellet realm. Zhao Congjian only broke through to inner pellet at the age of 18, and he was already crowned as the only one in history. Zhou Xuanji's goal was to break through to inner pellet before the age of 15. Judging from the current situation, it was not a difficult task. In front of the cliff, Xiao Jinghong held 2 swords in his hands and used 2 different sword techniques. He looked very impressive. He still had not mastered dual sword wills, but the speed at which he switched between his sword wills was much faster than before. Zhou Xuanji stood at the side and nodded occasionally. This disciple of his had good comprehension. He estimated that he would be able to master dual sword wills in less than half a year. Zhao Congjian ran over and said respectfully, "Master, the 36 Paths Jade Xiao sword has many transformations. There is something I don't understand." "Speak." Zhou Xuanji nodded and listened to Zhao Congjian's questions. He sighed in his heart. How are they sword slaves? They are all disciples. But he quite liked the process of nurturing them. What's the fun of traveling the world alone? With sword slaves, disciples, and maidservants, I can travel anywhere in the world. Whoever dares to cause trouble, sword slaves go. After Zhao Congjian's questions were answered, he left in satisfaction and continued to practice. Zhou Xuanji turned around and asked, "Will Meng Tianlang really keep his word?" Xiao Jinghong replied as he practiced, "Of course. But the Meng clan and the Great Zhou royal family might not agree to it. He needs time to settle everything. A year later, we will have a battle. He can't run away." Zhou Xuanji nodded. If he were Emperor Yan of Zhou, how could he let go of such a talent? Shortly after, he continued his cultivation in peace, and could not be bothered to think about this. 4 days later, he celebrated his 13th birthday. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 13 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations! The sword owner obtained gold water driving sword, white dragon golden robe, 300 pieces of 3rd grade spirit stones. The sword spirit's voice came as expected. Zhou Xuanji, who was internalizing qi, opened his eyes. Another gold grade legendary sword. Now, he had 5 gold grade legendary swords. They were the Hell King sword, Thunderclap sword, Bloodbath sword, Furious Ape sword, and this water driving sword. Good luck. Chapter 83. Zhou Xuanji took out the water driving sword. The sword was silver white in color, with ripple patterns on the blade. It was very beautiful, and it was 1.4 meters long. It felt light in his hand. Not bad. 3 lines of words appeared in front of his eyes. Sword name. Water driving sword grade, gold description. With this legendary sword, one can control all water in the world. The range of control is proportional to the sword owner's power. Control all water in the world? Incredible. The water driving sword could not only be used in battle, but it might have other uses in the future. Zhou Xuanji held the water driving sword and practiced the white crane sword technique. After familiarizing himself with it, he sheathed the sword. The others were cultivating on their own, and did not notice that he had another legendary sword. He opened his hands, and the white dragon golden robe appeared in his hands. Just like the verdant full cloud riding boots. Once the owner was recognized, the robe would change according to his size and fit comfortably. After changing into the white dragon golden robe, his entire aura changed. On the clean white robe, there were golden dragons drawn with golden patterns. They were vivid and lifelike. As the saying goes, clothes make the man, while the saddle makes the man. After putting on the white dragon golden robe, Zhou Xuanji's royal aura was displayed. His face was as clear as jade, and he had sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. His black hair was tied up at the back of his head, making him look lively and handsome. He did not lose out to the princes of Great Zhou. Little Jiang Shui, who was internalizing qi in front of small air, saw him and immediately ran over. The others also noticed that Zhou Xuanji had changed his clothes. After they saw him, they all praised him in their hearts. What a young man! Xiao Jingheng frowned suddenly. For some reason, he felt that Zhou Xuanji looked like another person. Zhou, 13 years old. Could it be? Xiao Jingheng suddenly thought of something and could not help but be moved. Fang Junsheng, who was chopping wood, praised loudly. Master, you are so wise and mighty. Northern Valiant Sword rolled his eyes. Can this brat be more serious in his bootlicking? Fang Junsheng was in the top 30 of Great Zhou's hero ranking board after all. He was at Inner Pellet, and was more powerful than Northern Valiant Sword. But in front of Northern Valiant Sword, he always had to bow and bow. If there were no accidents, Fang Junsheng would become Zhou Xuanji's sword slave sooner or later. So Northern Valiant Sword's attitude became better and better. He did not even bother to scold him anymore. Little Jiang Shui moved closer to Zhou Xuanji and sized him up. She nodded continuously. You're getting more and more handsome. God bless you, you didn't grow too old. Little Jiang Shui pinched Zhou Xuanji's cheeks and smiled happily. Zhou Xuanji glared at her and said unpleasantly, Of course. In the future, not only will I be the top swordsman in the world, but I'll also be the top commander in the world. Little Jiang Shui covered her mouth and chuckled. Yes, yes, yes. You're the most handsome. She suddenly thought of something and became discouraged. With a bitter face she said, Your clothes are really beautiful. I'm afraid the clothes I knitted for you can't compare. Zhou Xuanji comforted her. It's okay, I understand your intentions. Don't knit any more in the future, lest it hurts your hands. After the age of 12, his height began to increase by leaps and bounds. Now he was already at little Jiang Shui's eyebrows. He looked at the 17-year-old Jiang Shui, no Jiang Shui. Zhou Xuanji was filled with amazement. The flower finally bloomed. Jiang Shui felt regret and disappointment. But when she looked up and met Zhou Xuanji's gaze, the gentleness in his eyes made her disappointment disappear immediately. She smiled sweetly and said, I'll listen to you. The two of them stood at the edge of the cliff and began to chat. They talked about the jokes of the past and their hopes for the future. As they chatted, the two of them sat at the edge of the cliff. Jiang Shui could not change her bad habit. Once she got close to Zhou Xuanji, she could not help but feel up to him. And so, she wrapped her arms around Zhou Xuanji's neck. Zhou Xuanji said helplessly, In another year, your arms will get sore if you hug me like this. Jiang Shui smiled without a care. It's okay. You can hug me when the time comes. Hey, don't you understand? Men and women should not touch each other. We are all grown up. Hey, why are you talking to me about this? Don't we always sleep in the same room? Okay, from today onwards, let's sleep in separate rooms. You dare. The two of them began to quarrel, and the others were envious of them. Northern Sword Valiant sighed. Back then, I had a childhood friend like him too. Fang Junsheng asked curiously, What about now? Gone. Northern Sword Valiant replied calmly. After that, he turned around and left, leaving Fang Junsheng with a lonely and bleak silhouette. This was a man with a story. Fang Junsheng rubbed his chin and thought. Time passed quickly. Another 5 months had passed. Zhou Xuanji broke through to enlightening level 9. And the first stage of the Great Zhou Heaven selection came to an end. Following the shocking news of Sword God Zhou defeating Meng Tianlang, the cultivators who passed by the cliff dared not to cause trouble. Even the demon kings did not dare to get close. However, the peace was still broken. This day a group of soldiers came on a cloud. There was a carriage on top of it. The carriage was luxurious and luxurious. It was more than 3 times the size of an ordinary carriage, and looked like a small building. Zhao Tsongjian, Xiao Jinghong, Northern Sword Valiant, and the others gathered around Zhou Xuanji. Great Zhou's Ming clan's flag. It should be Ming Tianlong's elder, Xiao Jinghong said softly. The leader of the soldiers held a huge flag with the word Ming carved on it. Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes and did not speak. Soon, the Ming clan soldiers stopped in front of the cliff. The curtain of the carriage was pulled open, and a middle-aged man wearing a black robe with python patterns walked out slowly. His sideburns were like fire, his body was muscular, and he had a stocky build. Just by standing there, he gave people a strong sense of oppression. He stared at Zhou Xuanji and said, "You are sword god Zhou?" Zhou Xuanji asked, "Who are you?" Ming clan Ming Changhu, Great Zhou's second-ranked general king. I feel that the bet between my nephew, Tianlang, and you should be discussed at length, so I came specially. The middle-aged man in black leaped up and landed in front of Zhou Xuanji and the others. His boldness was even stronger than Ming Tianlong's. Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Tsongjian, and Northern Sword Valiant were all prepared for battle. Fang Junxing lowered his head and hid behind Huang Lianxin. He did not dare to look at Meng Changhu directly. I wasn't the one who forced him to make this bet, Zhou Xuanji said casually, which made Meng Changhu frown. He frowned and the pressure grew stronger. He looked at Zhou Xuanji's face carefully. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly, and a strange look flashed in his eyes. If you have any requests, just tell me, Meng Changhu said calmly, but his eyes flickered with a strange look. There's no room for discussion, Zhou Xuanji replied. If he let this go, he would lose face. Okay. Meng Changhu flicked his sleeves and turned around. He pointed at Fang Junxing and said, "You come here. Follow me home. If your father knew that you are such a coward, your wives and concubines can forget about living." Fang Junxing heard him, and his expression changed drastically. He could only grit his teeth and walk up to him. Meng Changhu grabbed his shoulder and flew up to the clouds. Zhou Xuanji did not stop him. Fang Junxing was not his sword slave yet, and Meng Changhu was not Fang Junxing's enemy. He had no reason to stop him. Meng Changhu walked into the carriage, and the soldiers left on the clouds. Prince Xuanji, His Majesty was right. You will be the top prodigy in Great Zhou's history. You have perfectly inherited the royal bloodline of Great Zhou. But I have to give you a piece of advice. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. Meng Changhu's voice came suddenly, and Zhou Xuanji's expression changed. The others did the same and looked at Zhou Xuanji. Chapter 84. Master, you are the Prince of Great Zhou? Zhao Tsongjian could not help but ask. His expression was complicated, and he could not help but think of Zhou Qingxin. If Zhou Qingxin knew Zhou Xuanji's identity, wouldn't he vomit blood? The powerful cultivator that he tried so hard to rope in was actually his brother. Xiao Jinghong was in deep thought. Bei Xiao Wangjian and Huang Lianxin were shocked, but they did not ask. Zhou Xuanji wanted to kill the Empress of Great Zhou, so why would it be impossible for him to be the Prince of Great Zhou? Little Jiang Shui looked at Zhou Xuanji worriedly. She knew what kind of danger he would face if his identity was exposed. Zhou Xuanji stared at the direction where Meng Changhu's group left and said calmly, "Yes, I am the son of Lady Zhao Xian, Zhou Xuanji." Lady Zhao Xian. Everyone's expression changed. They still remembered the shocking incident 11 years ago clearly. Back then, in order to search for Lady Zhao Xian and her son, Great Zhou went to great lengths. All the kingdoms helped, but both mother and son died in the end. I see, Huang Lianxin mumbled to herself. No wonder Zhou Xuanji wanted to kill the Empress of Great Zhou. All the questions were answered immediately. Back then, Emperor Yan of Zhou favored Lady Zhao Xian, which made the Empress jealous. It was not a secret. Xiao Jinghong squinted his eyes and said, "Back then, when revered teacher was just born, he was loved by the emperor. But Lady Zhao Xian's family rebelled at this time. There must be more to it than meets the eye." Bei Xiao Wangjian nodded and guessed. If they did not rebel, Lady Zhao Xian's family would have a meteoric rise. After the rebellion, the one who benefited the most was the Empress of Great Zhou. Zhao Tsongjian walked up to Zhou Xuanji and half knelt. I will definitely kill my way into the Great Zhou royal palace for master and avenge you. Although he was a sword slave, Zhou Xuanji treated him just as well as Xiao Jinghong. He never treated him harshly. He did not express his feelings, but he remembered them in his heart. Bei Xiao Wangjian and Huang Lianxin saw this and knelt down as well. We will go through fire and water for master. Wherever master goes, I will go, even if there is a slim chance of survival. Both of them looked resolute and fearless. Xiao Jinghong knelt down as well, and cupped his fists. A teacher for a day is a teacher for life. Now that I, Xiao Jinghong, have acknowledged you as my master, your matters are my matters. Even if the enemy is the Emperor of Great Zhou, I will definitely stand before you. Looking at the four people in front of him, Zhou Xuanji felt a little teary. Other than Jiang Shui, he didn't expect to get four other people who would risk their lives for him. He laughed heroically and said, "What are you doing? Hurry up and get up. I value my life more than you do. I won't bring you to your deaths." The atmosphere was no longer tense. Everyone smiled and stood up. Jiang Shui smiled and said, "With Xuanji's talent, it will be easy for him to take revenge in the future." Zhou Xuanji nodded and smiled. "We promised to travel the world together. Master, let's make a deal. After you get your revenge, we'll go to the holy land of the sword, 10,000 Swords Divine Mountain. How about that?" Xiao Jinghong smiled as a yearning look appeared on his face. Zhao Tsongjian's eyes brightened. The legendary 10,000 Swords Divine Ridge? It really exists. Xiao Jinghong nodded. Jiang Shui, Bei Xiao Wangjian, and Huang Lianxin were all curious. They did not know much about the Northern Wilderness region. Not to mention the Northern Wilderness region, they had not even explored the entire Great Zhou dynasty. Zhou Xuanji laughed and said, "Go. Of course. In the future, wherever you want to go, we will go." The group looked at each other and laughed. Even in the face of the Emperor's threat, they still laughed heartily. After chatting for a while, they decided to leave this place. Since Meng Changhu could recognize Zhou Xuanji's identity, it meant danger. Who knew which faction Meng Changhu belonged to? Now that the ascension of Emperor Yan of Zhou was getting closer, the fight for the throne was getting more and more intense. Zhou Xuanji did not want to die recklessly. He could not just shout, "I'm the Prince of Great Zhou, Zhou Xuanji." If he did so, he would die even faster. After all, Zhou Yalong had the highest chance of becoming the emperor. He had already won over half of the royal court, and the empress was even more powerful in the royal palace. Even though Emperor Yan of Zhou had great powers, it was extremely difficult for Zhou Xuanji to appear before him. Woo! A big roared in the sky, and the group flew on their swords. Jiang Shui hugged Zhou Xuanji's waist, while the three-eyed drought rodent was in his arms. The little black snake laid on the three-eyed drought rodent's head and exclaimed, "Impressive. I didn't expect you to be a prince of the Great Zhou dynasty, and of the royal bloodline of the Great Zhou dynasty? Your father is a top-notch almighty in the Northern Wilderness region, and he is world-shaking." It talked endlessly as if it was Emperor Yan of Zhou's son. Zhou Xuanji ignored it and headed deeper into the immortal Sundering Mountain range. Along the way, they encountered many cultivators. Seeing Zhou Xuanji, those cultivators could not contain their excitement and continuously cried out. They flew for 1,000 li. Zhou Xuanji learned a lot of news. He was already ranked third on the Great Zhou honor ranking. It even overshadowed the brilliance of Great Zhou's Heavens selection. Defeating Meng Tianlang was not enough to cause such a stir. It was mainly because of the accumulation of his previous achievements. The Demon Emperor's son, North Zhou Gale Sword, Zhao Tsongjian Xiezong, Meng Tianlang, Sword God Zhou, who appeared out of nowhere, was already a legend in the eyes of the people. He was an undefeated legend. How powerful was Meng Tianlang? He was defeated by a single sword strike and almost died. How powerful was Sword God Zhou? Within Great Zhou, it was widely believed that Sword God Zhou had already surpassed the astral infant stage. There were very few experts who surpassed the nascent soul realm, and it was difficult for a dynasty to produce one in 1,000 years. Even within the dynasty, they would be top experts and would be roped in by the court. TSK, if this continues, will people think that you are more powerful than the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou? Jiang Shui rested her chin on Zhou Xuanji's shoulder and asked with a smile. The strong wind messed up her hair, and she could only squint her eyes. Even so, she was still beautiful. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, Sword God and Sword Monarch, who's more powerful? Can't you tell from their names? Bullshit, but you'll definitely be stronger than him in the future. Jiang Shui pinched Zhou Xuanji's face and giggled. Hey, I'm flying on my sword. Be careful not to get into an accident. Zhou Xuanji cried out loudly, which frightened Jiang Shui so much that she immediately stopped. The others were also laughing. Thinking back to that sword strike from that day, they still felt amazed. They traveled for 7 days. The group found a valley that was open and surrounded by mountains. There was a lake, flowers, and trees in the valley. It was suitable for living. After checking in, everyone continued to cultivate. Zhou Xuanji's goal was to break through to Inner Pellet as soon as possible. Next, every month, he would send Xiao Jinghong and Zhao Tsongjian out to find out about the Empress' visit to Merciful Melody Cliff. One thing was for sure. Before Great Zhou's heaven selection ended, the Empress, as the mother of the empire, would not go out. 4 months later, Zhou Xuanji successfully broke through to enlightening level 10. At the same time, Jiang Shui and Huang Lianxin reached foundation building level 10. Beixiao Wangjian received a lot of resources and reached enlightening level 8. Zhao Tsongjian received a year of guidance from Zhou Xuanji and began to break through to Soul Fountain. The entire group was becoming more powerful quickly. This day, Great Zhou's heaven selection's first round ended. Great Zhou's army retreated from Immortal Sundering Mountain. Immortal Sundering Mountain welcomed peace. The demons no longer hid and came out to roam the world. Whoosh! In the valley, Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating, felt a gust of cold wind. Immortal Sundering Mountain was like spring all year round, and it was rare to have such a cold wind. He looked up instinctively, and his expression changed. He saw a silhouette standing on the top of a mountain. The sun shone above his head, and no one could see his face clearly. Chapter 85. There's someone. Everyone be careful. Xiao Jinghong's voice came from a tree not far away. Zhao Tsongjian and Beixiao Wangjian, whom he was teaching, turned around as well. Jiang Shui and Huang Lianxin, who were bathing the dragon eagles by the lake, also became alert. The little black snake, who was sleeping soundly on the three-eyed drought rodent's head, quivered and raised its head to look. His Majesty said that you were the chosen one. But you died at the age of 2 and became a joke. I didn't expect you to still be alive. An old voice sounded. His tone was indifferent, and it was impossible to tell what he was feeling. Zhou Xuanji's heart trembled. People from the Great Zhou Empire? Before he could say anything, Xiao Jinghong asked, Who exactly are you, and why have you come here? Sword King Xiao Jinghong? You're quite a character, but it's a pity that you followed the wrong person. The world will belong to the second prince in the future. Zhao Xian's son must die. The ancient voice came again. After that, he leaped up and dived down toward Zhou Xuanji. He rushed out of the sunlight and revealed his true self. He was dressed in a loose black robe, and his face was like an eagle's. His white hair fluttered in the wind, and he was like an evil demon that had been born. Zhou Xuanji took out the Hell King's sword and Thunderclap's sword and prepared to fight. Xiao Jinghong's treasured sword shot towards the black-robed elder like a sharp arrow. Master, this person is also at the nascent soul realm. Leave him to me. Xiao Jinghong bellowed and leaped into the air. He took out another sword and slashed at the black-robed old man. After the black-robed old man dodged the incoming sword, he flipped his right hand, and a black wooden scepter appeared in his hand. The top of the scepter looked like a scorched claw, and it was horrifying. The scepter and the sword clashed together, causing sparks to fly and an ear-piercing sound. Xiao Jinghong turned around and caught the other sword with his left hand. Wielding his sword with both hands, he moved like a swallow and fought fiercely with the black-robed old man in the air. The two of them attacked extremely quickly, and even Zhou Xuanji was dazzled by their movements. Zhao Tsongjian looked at the sky with a burning gaze. This guy had forgotten about the danger. He only felt excited and wanted to learn something. Xiao Jinghong's swords were like the wind, and his attacks were swift and fierce, similar to Zhou Xuanji's style. The black-robed old man held the scepter in his hand, and strands of evil qi seeped out from the scepter, turning into numerous ghost heads that surrounded Xiao Jinghong. Compared to Xiao Jinghong, the black-robed old man's movements were bold and majestic, and he had the aura of a general. Zhou Xuanji frowned slightly. He could tell that Xiao Jinghong did not have the upper hand. From the looks of it, this person was at the peak of the nascent soul realm. Jiang Shui walked to Zhou Xuanji's side and took out the flaming fan. "Do we need help?" Zhou Xuanji said. "We can't interfere. Let's not give him more trouble." He was somewhat moved that Xiao Jinghong would still stand up for the experts of the Great Zhou Empire. Now that he thought about it, Xiao Jinghong had already helped him several times before he had mastered the dual sword intent that he had taught him. To have such a disciple was the greatest fortune of his life. The battle continued. The black-robed elder's aura grew stronger and stronger. Even though Xiao Jinghong kept switching his sword intents, he was still unable to gain the upper hand. The two of them continued to fight along the mountain wall, causing rocks to fall from the mountain. If they continued to fight like this, they would probably fill up the entire valley. "Xiao Jinghong, you are indeed powerful. But when I was young, I was ranked in the top 5 of Great Zhou's hero ranking board. Now that I am 7 levels higher than you, you are no match for me." The black-robed elder snorted coldly. His tone was filled with coldness and murderous intent. After he spoke, he leaped up abruptly and shook off Xiao Jinghong. A billowing black wind came out from his sleeves and circled around his body, forming into a black dragon that was hundreds of meters long. It roared furiously and shook the heavens and the earth. The little black snake opened its eyes wide at this scene and said with a trembling voice, "Dragon soul. This old guy is so lucky." Next, the black-robed elder entered the black dragon's head. The black dragon twisted its body and charged toward Xiao Jinghong with an unstoppable force. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Xiao Jinghong did not panic at all. He danced with his sword on the spot, and streaks of sword shadows appeared out of nowhere. In an instant, tens of thousands of sword shadows appeared around him. He stabbed with his sword, and all the sword shadows shot out simultaneously. It was like a powerful current crashing into the black dragon. Boom! The surrounding mountains shook violently. The trees swayed and a violent gale blew. Zhou Xuanji looked up at this scene with squinted eyes. He looked calm, but he was actually worried for Xiao Jinghong. At the same time, he was looking for an opportunity to deal a fatal blow to the black-robed elder. Soon, Xiao Jinghong's sword shadows were torn apart by the black dragon. The black dragon crashed into Xiao Jinghong's face, and the horrifying force caused Xiao Jinghong to vomit blood immediately. His body smashed into the mountain wall like a cannonball and disappeared. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The black-robed elder stood high above. He turned to look at Zhou Xuanji and said, "Prince Xuanji, remember, the person who captured you is called Qin Qitsuan. Come with me to see the empress." He charged toward Zhou Xuanji suddenly, and the black dragon followed him. Its 100-meter-long body was awe-inspiring and gave off an unstoppable aura. Clang! Clang! Xiao Jinghong suddenly appeared in front of the black dragon and stabbed with both swords. The swords pierced through the black dragon's head and into Qin Qitsuan's shoulders. So fast! Zhao Tsongjian opened his eyes wide and cried out in disbelief. He did not see Xiao Jinghong's movement trajectory at all. Qin Qitsuan was shocked too. He saw that Xiao Jinghong was surrounded by 2 types of sword wills, one green and one white, each occupying half of his body. The sword qi was visible to the naked eye. He stared at Qin Qitsuan coldly, as though he was looking at a dead man. "This is 2 types of sword wills? How can it be?" Qin Qitsuan cried out in shock. He suddenly remembered that Sword God Zhou was proficient in dual sword wills. Xiao Jinghong learned dual sword wills by following Sword God Zhou? Before he could think further, Xiao Jinghong relied on dual sword wills and unleashed an unprecedented attack, which forced him back step by step. He learned dual sword wills, Bei Xiao Wangjian mumbled to himself. His tone was a little bitter. This was his talent. Comparing oneself to others would only make one angry. Zhou Xuanji shook his head slightly. He could tell that Xiao Jinghong only broke through in the face of danger, and his dual sword wills were not stable. After being slashed by Xiao Jinghong for dozens of times, Qin Chitsuan was covered in blood. He went completely berserk and roared. The black dragon materialized again and grew even bigger. Xiao Jinghong stepped back suddenly. He held the sword in his right hand in front of him, and the sword in his left hand behind his back. The blade was pointed at the center of his brows. His eyes were cold and sharp, and he was prepared to kill Qin Chitsuan in one strike. The two sword wills transformed into green and white flames, and his aura grew even more powerful. Swoosh! He transformed into a beam of light that alternated between green and white, and charged toward Qin Chitsuan. Boom! The black dragon collapsed, and Xiao Jinghong's swords pierced through Qin Chitsuan's abdomen. Blood splattered. The black-robed old man hit Xiao Jinghong's back with his staff, and the sound of bones breaking was extremely clear. Next, Qin Chitsuan slammed into the mountain wall, while Xiao Jinghong fell to the bottom of the valley. The impact swept up a cloud of dust. Zhou Xuanji and the others immediately surrounded him. Xiao Jinghong coughed up blood continuously, and no longer had the strength to stand up. Almost. Damn, Xiao Jinghong said with dissatisfaction. He spoke with great difficulty. Zhou Xuanji squatted in front of him and said, "You have done well." His opponent was not an ordinary person. It was not easy for Xiao Jinghong to injure him so severely. At this moment, a horrifying aura exploded from the mountain wall. A black dragon emerged from the hole in the mountain wall. Qin Chitsuan, who was covered in blood, flew out slowly. His face was hideous. He covered his abdomen with his left hand, and blood gushed out from between his fingers. Xiao Jinghong, I'm going to make you wish you were dead, but unable to. Qin Chitsuan roared with gritted teeth. His eyes were filled with madness. Everyone was shocked and got up to fight. Zhou Xuanji took a step forward and said, "Take good care of him." After that, strands of black qi came out from the Hell King's sword, and formed into the Hell King, which attached itself to his body. The thunderclap sword emitted lightning that surrounded the Hell King, which looked like the god of thunder. Chapter 86. Seeing the Hell King's image on Zhou Xuanji's body, Qin Chitsuan was shocked in his heart. But Zhou Xuanji did not even have the cultivation of inner pellet. Even though he was heavily injured, he could not defeat him. He laughed disdainfully and said, "What? Is Prince Xuanji prepared to fight to the death?" The princes of the great Zhou dynasty were extremely noble. Now that he could personally torture Emperor Yan of Zhou's beloved son, he felt somewhat excited. Zhou Xuanji coldly looked at him, and legendary swords appeared behind him. Crimson Dragon Sword, Frost Wave Sword, Bloodbath Sword, Tiger Roar Sword, Wind Cutter Sword, Swine Culling Sword, Golden Rock Sword, Heaven Sound Sword, Afterimage Sword, Formless Sword, Furious Ape Sword, Chicken Slaying Sword, Water Driving Sword, Zhao Tsongjian, Beixiao Wangjian, Xiao Jinghong, and Huang Lianqin were all stunned. Not just 10 swords. Qin Chitsuan's laughter became even more arrogant as he said disdainfully, "No matter how many swords there are, it's all futile." After saying this, he bent down and charged forward. The massive black dragon bore down on Zhou Xuanji like a mountain. With the Hell King sword and Thunderclap sword in hand, Zhou Xuanji bent his legs and charged forward with the other 13 legendary swords. The Crimson Dragon sword vibrated, and a Crimson Dragon soul roared out. The Frost Wave sword trembled and waves of cold air shot out. The Tiger Roar sword let out a tiger roar. The Heavenly Sound sword let out a series of bewildering sounds. The Afterimage sword turned into countless afterimages. And the Furious Ape sword roared. It was just one person, but he had the power of a magnificent army, shaking the entire valley. Qin Chitsuan's expression changed slightly. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji's speed suddenly increased. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji could no longer be measured by the enlightening stage. He was the Netherworld King. The soul of the Crimson Dragon collided with the Black Dragon first. Although it was torn apart by the Black Dragon, it also caused the Black Dragon to pause for a moment. Zhou Xuanji activated Vibrant Raindrops Sword Will and Tempest/Sword Will. His speed was extremely fast. The two swords merged together and pierced through the Black Dragon's body as he charged toward Qin Chitsuan. Qin Chitsuan had been severely injured by Xiao Jinghong, so his strength was no longer at its peak. He subconsciously swung his scepter, but the two gold-ranked divine swords directly broke his scepter. Impossible. Qin Shitsuan was greatly shocked in his heart. This was a 5th-tier transcendent-grade magic tool. How could it be so weak? The Hell King sword and the Thunderclap sword pierced his chest. Lightning exploded and wreaked havoc on his body, causing him to raise his head and scream in pain. How dare you bully my disciple? I want to see who will suffer a fate worse than death. Zhou Xuanji's face was cold. He pulled his hands outward and slashed horizontally with both swords, tearing open Qin Shitsuan's chest. Blood splattered across the sky. Subsequently, the other 13 divine swords revealed their divine might in succession. Sword lights flickered as they slashed and slashed madly, and Qin Shitsuan was like a wooden stake that was slashed to the point his flesh and blood splattered in all directions. It was an extremely miserable scene. The unimaginable pain almost made him faint. He abruptly transformed into a cloud of black mist and dissipated on the spot, appearing out of thin air on the mountain wall 100 feet away. He breathed heavily, his eyes bloodshot. He was no longer a perfect person, looking horrifying and terrifying. Who are you? How dare you possess Prince Xuanji's body? Qin Shitsuan stared at Zhou Xuanji and asked with difficulty. No matter how devilish Zhou Xuanji was, it was impossible for him to be so powerful. It was completely illogical. Little did he know that his guess was only half correct. Zhou Xuanji did not possess someone else's body and reincarnate, but he retained the memories of his previous life. Remember, I have another name, Sword God Zhou, the god of the sword's way. Zhou Xuanji cried out coldly. He could tell that Qin Shitsuan, who was severely injured, could be killed. Since he could kill him, then he had to act tough. After that, he activated the Trisource vein-severing sword. Countless sword chi surged out and drowned Qin Shitsuan. Boom! 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 The mountain wall exploded. Countless rocks fell down, and a cloud of dust swept up. Ah, Sword God Zhou, Zhou Xuanji, you will die a horrible death. Her Majesty the Empress will send even more experts to capture you. She will make you suffer a fate worse than death, just like your damned grandfather. Qin Shitsuan cried out hoarsely. His tone was filled with hatred. Soon his voice stopped. He was dead. Swoosh! A baby shrouded in black light suddenly rushed out of the rubble and dust, flying towards the sky at high speed. Astral infant. Zhou Xuanji's eyes focused and threw out the bloodbath sword straightaway. Range sword propelling. It could slash an enemy from 100 miles away. Just when Qin Shitsuan's astral infant flew over the mountain, the gold-grade legendary sword slashed toward it. Like a flying knife cutting a watermelon, Qin Shitsuan's astral infant was slashed into pieces. Zhou Xuanji, who was standing on the formless sword, levitated in the air like a celestial being. His body was surrounded by legendary swords. He looked upward, at the place where blood bloomed. The bloodbath sword circled in the air and flew toward Zhou Xuanji. This scene was like a painting. It shocked Jiang Shui, Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, Beishao Wangjian, Huang Lianxin, and the little black snake. Even the three-eyed drought rodent, a big and small heir's eyes were beaming. How domineering! Jiang Shui mumbled. My Xuanji has really grown up. Xiao Jinghong was dazzled. He could not imagine such a scene in his entire life. Zhou Xuanji stored his sword and landed in front of Xiao Jinghong. He stared at Beishao Wangjian and said, "Hurry up and heal him." Beishao Wangjian came back to his senses and quickly took out some pills. Zhou Xuanji looked at Zhao Zongjian and said, "Go and search. See if the old man left anything behind." Yes. Zhao Zongjian held back his excitement and left. Jiang Shui walked up to Zhou Xuanji and patted off the dust on his body. "Xuanji, you are so awesome," she said with an excited smile. Ever since Zhou Xuanji's identity was exposed, she addressed him as Xuanji without holding back. Zhou Xuanji smiled and said, "Haven't I always been awesome?" Jiang Shui nodded heavily. She could not stop the smile on her face. Huang Lianxin sighed in amazement. "You even killed an astral infant. I feel that no matter how powerful the enemy is, Master has a way to deal with them." The three-eyed drought rodent ran over with the little black snake and jumped onto Zhou Xuanji's shoulder. The little black snake said excitedly, "I'm really convinced. Little brat, I will follow you from now on." Can you treat me better? Zhou Xuanji ignored it and said to Xiao Jinghong, I comprehended dual sword wills during this crisis, but it's not stable enough. You have to practice more in the future. After Xiao Jinghong consumed the pills, he had recovered much of his qi and blood. He tried his best to squeeze out a smile and said, Your disciple will remember. Soon, Zhao Tsongjian returned with 3 storage rings. Once Qin Qitsuan died, his soul imprint disappeared from the rings, so they were ownerless. Zhou Xuanji inspected them and said without a smile, Not bad. Pack up and get ready to leave Immortal Sundering Mountain. Jiang Shui asked, Where are we going? Zhou Xuanji said, To the border of Great Zhou, and wait for the Empress to leave the court. No one had any objections. 4 hours later, Xiao Jinghong's injuries were mostly healed, and they left. Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui rode on Big's back, while Huang Lianqin rode on Small Air's back. The others flew on their swords. After they left the valley, Zhou Xuanji first recovered the spiritual qi in his body. He flipped his right hand and took out the furious ape sword. He tilted his head and instructed, Look after me. If I need anything, help me immediately. Don't let me fall. Jiang Shui, who was hugging his waist, asked in confusion, What are you going to do? Zhou Xuanji said calmly, Charge up and wait for the dogs to come. Chapter 87. A violent gale blew against Zhou Xuanji's face, and his hands felt a little sore. He had been holding the sword for 3 days and 3 nights. Every time he stopped to rest, he had to rely on Jiang Shui's support. Zhao Tsongjian flew to Ada and asked, Master, how much longer are you going to hold it up? Jiang Shui poured out the pill and fed it to Zhou Xuanji personally. Zhou Xuanji said calmly, Don't ask so much. You will understand later. Zhao Tsongjian became even more curious. He thought about the scene when Zhou Xuanji was dealing with Meng Tianlang and understood something. He took a deep look at the furious ape sword. Then he rode his sword to increase the distance between them. Xiao Jinghong smiled and said, There are great mountains and rivers in front of us. My appointment with Meng Tianlang at the border is coming soon. Wait for my good news then. Northern Sword Valiant followed behind him and asked in surprise, Are we not allowed to follow? Zhao Tsongjian, Huang Lianqin, and Jiang Shui all looked towards Xiao Jinghong. Xiao Jinghong shook his head and said, You can't. This battle has long been known to the public, and the Great Zhou dynasty is secretly promoting it to pave the way for Meng Tianlang. If Master goes, you will definitely run into Zhou Yalong and the Empress's minions. It will be very dangerous, and even 10 of me would not be able to withstand it. Everyone came to a realization. Zhou Xuanji glanced at Xiao Jinghong and asked, If you win, will there be any trouble? Between Xiao Jinghong and Meng Tianlang, who was stronger? As a master, he naturally trusted his disciple unconditionally. With Laozi's dual sword will here, how can a mere Meng Tianlang be enough to kill? Xiao Jinghong laughed and said, Does the Great Zhou dare to touch me in front of everyone? Even in this immortal-like world, most people still cared about their face. The higher one stood, the more they cared about their face. Everyone smiled at each other and continued forward. For the next 7 days, they did not encounter any trouble. Zhou Xuanji's face was pale. With Jiang Shui's nourishment, his spirit energy was not depleted. However, he had been accumulating power for 10 days, and his arms were really sore. Damn it, did I miscalculate? Zhou Xuanji mumbled, and Jiang Shui, who was behind him, could not help but giggle. She reached out to massage his arm and said with a smile, Isn't it good to miscalculate? What if you get injured during the fighting? Zhou Xuanji sighed. Jiang Shui was right. However, he inexplicably hoped that there would be enemies, and that he would be able to seize the treasure. No, I can't have such thoughts. In this world, one cannot rely on surfing. Time passed. Another 10 days passed. Zhou Xuanji charged up for 20 days. He could sense the horrifying energy contained in the furious ape sword, which was enough to destroy the world. If Meng Tianlang came again, he would definitely tear him to pieces. Xiao Jinghong fully recovered with the help of some healing pills. He glanced at the furious ape sword in Zhou Xuanji's hand and swallowed his saliva. Back then, how long did Zhou Xuanji wait to kill Meng Tianlang? It was too scary. Xiao Jinghong sympathized with those who were about to kill Zhou Xuanji. Master, there is still half a day before we leave the great Zhou dynasty. Zhao Zongjian turned around and said. He could not help but glance at the furious ape sword. After all, Xiao Jinghong was even more frightening to him. Zhou Xuanji's face was covered in sweat, and his face was pale. His arms trembled continuously. If not for Jiang Shui's support, he would have fallen long ago. At first glance, he thought that Zhou Xuanji was dying. Zhou Xuanji squeezed out a smile and said, "So soon? What a pity." When everyone heard this, they burst into laughter, holding their bellies. 2 hours later, they passed by Wuxia city. The city was not big, and they would reach the border pass of Great Zhou in a few dozen miles. Looking at the bustling streets below, Beishao Wangjian sighed. If it were me in the past, I would definitely like to stay in a crowded city. But now, I like the feeling of running around. Zhao Zongjian smiled and said, "Or else, how can there be so many tourists in the world?" The group was chatting and laughing, and they did not look like they were running for their lives. They were about to pass by Wuxia city. Sword God Zhou, stop right there. You killed the 3rd grade royal guard Qin Qitsuan. Today we will uphold the dignity of Great Zhou. A roar suddenly came from behind him. Everyone turned to look, only to see a burly man wearing heavy tiger head armor, leading a group of tigers and wolves soaring through the clouds. At a glance, there were at least 300 of them. The hundreds of thousands of people in Wuxia city were stunned. Sword God Zhou, he killed the 3rd grade royal guard Qin Qitsuan? Xiao Jinghong's expression changed and cried out. Oh no! It's Tai Yulong. His cultivation is at astral infant level 10, only one step away from astral projection. The royal soldiers behind him are all elites, all at Soul Fountain. The group heard him, and their expressions changed drastically. Only Zhou Xuanji was excited. He said with a trembling voice, "Quick, help me up." Seeing this group of people, he almost cried. "Oh my God! You are finally here." Jiang Shui quickly helped him up. Seeing that Tai Yulong and the 300 royal soldiers were getting closer, Zhou Xuanji's lips began to tremble. If they did not come soon, he would not be able to hold on any longer. He held his sword with both hands and shouted at Tai Yulong and the others. I, Sword God Zhou, have never offended the great Zhou Empire. The Empress sent people to kill me for no reason. Is there still justice in Great Zhou? With so many people below, it was a good opportunity to pour cold water on the Empress. After that, Zhou Xuanji slashed furiously. This slash was accompanied by the roar of an ancient furious ape, which shocked the heavens and the earth, and made the gods weep. It was such an exhilarating slash. I held it in for 20 days. A whole 20 days. Roar. The roar of the ancient furious ape was so deafening that everyone felt dizzy, and their ears were ringing. It was as though the sun and moon had turned upside down, and the mountains and rivers were shaking. A horrifying sword qi, that was hundreds of meters long, shot out with unparalleled speed. It swept across the distance of 1,000 meters in an instant. In the eyes of the hundreds of thousands of people in Wuxia city, it was as though a white crescent moon swept across Tai Yulong, and the others with a powerful gale. In an instant, Tai Yulong and the 300 royal soldiers turned into ashes. They were dead. Even Tai Yulong's astral infant could not escape in time. The sword qi was unstoppable. It soared into the sky and traveled for 10 miles, slicing off a tall mountain behind Wuxia city. The mountain rocks collapsed and shook the heavens and earth. Everyone was dumbfounded. They could not believe their eyes. Even Xiao Jinghong, Zhao Zongjian, and the others opened their mouths wide. Their eyes were about to fall out. Jiang Shui, who was supporting Zhou Xuanji, was also stunned. This slash was too powerful. Was this something a human could do? Oh God! The heavens and earth were silent, so silent that it was terrifying. Zhou Xuanji panted, and maintained his posture of swinging his sword. Abig's wings flapped continuously, but he felt a little pain on his head and a little cold. The slash just now had shaved off the hair on his head. Zhou Xuanji did not notice his beloved pet's embarrassment. He cried out proudly. The Empress of Great Zhou is only a... First she killed Lady Zhao Xian and her son, then she killed me for no reason. Is this how the mother of Great Zhou should behave? What a joke! What a big joke! I Sword God Zhou despise such people the most. After that he said softly to Xiao Jinghong and the others, let's go. A big and small air immediately flapped their wings and flew away. The others followed on their swords. The group flew quickly toward Great Zhou's border. After a period of silence, Wuxia city exploded. The cries of hundreds of thousands of people gathered together, as though the sky was about to be turned upside down. Oh my God! Sword God! He's definitely the Sword God. The famous Tai Yulong died just like that. The Empress of Great Zhou is so vicious? She dared to harm me, Sword God Zhou? Is there any justice in this world? That slash just now. Did I see it wrong? So horrifying. It's not something a human can do. It's a god. A god. Chapter 88. After a full-powered slash, Zhou Xuanji became a cripple. However, with Xiao Jinghong and Zhao Tsongjian in front of them, they forced their way out of the Great Border Pass and disappeared into the vast forest without a trace. The news of Sword God Zhou killing Tai Yulong and 300 royal soldiers with a single strike was like a nuclear bomb exploding. It spread like wildfire to the cities around Wuxia city. In less than 3 days, the news had spread throughout the Great Zhou dynasty. 5 days later, even the dynasties under the Great Zhou dynasty were discussing this matter. The name of Sword God Zhou was known by the whole world. Meanwhile, Zhou Xuanji and the others came to a place where demons roamed freely and humans were rarely seen. Master, doesn't this look like the place where we first met? Xiao Jinghong asked with a smile. Zhou Xuanji, who was being supported by Jiang Shui, nodded. He looked around, took a deep breath and sighed. Although the landscape of the mountains and rivers is similar, we have all changed. Fortunately, we have not dispersed yet. Xiao Jinghong couldn't help but sigh. Thinking back to the past and looking at the present, he had more emotions than Zhao Tsongjian and the others. Northern Sword Valiant laughed. If I don't master dual sword wills, I won't drink anymore. Huang Lianxin covered her mouth and giggled. Your wine has been taken by master. You can't drink it even if you wanted to. Zhao Tsongjian looked at Xiao Jinghong and said, my goal is to surpass you. Xiao Jinghong smiled and said, then you have to work harder. Jiang Shui pointed at the mountain in front of them and said, let's stay on the hillside in front. There's a river in the west, and a boundless forest in the north. We can have anything we want. Isn't that great? Compared to the bustling dynasties, she preferred this desolate and uninhabited place. Humans were always more terrifying than demons. Zhou Xuanji said weakly, it's up to you. Help me sit down. He wailed in his heart. In the future, he could not casually accumulate power for a long period of time. Swinging the sword felt good for a moment, but afterward, his legs turned to jelly. Hearing this, everyone laughed and continued to walk towards the hillside in front of them. The hill was 100 meters tall and 300 meters wide, and there was a small cliff behind it. For Zhou Xuanji and the others, they would not fall to their deaths. Jiang Shui helped Zhou Xuanji to a rock and sat him down. Jiang Shui took out a small stove and prepared to brew some tonic for him. Whoa! Not far away, the Baldada called out in a low voice. He and Little Fool were crouching on the ground, squeezing each other's bodies. It really seemed like they were wronged. Zhou Xuanji stared at it and scolded unpleasantly. It's just a few strands of fur. Is there a need to do this? When I, your master, swing my sword, don't you know to lower your head? Ada felt even more wronged and buried his head in the grass. At this moment, the little black snake dragged the sleeping three-eyed drought rodent over with difficulty. It smiled coyly and said, Master, when will you start helping me become stronger? Ever since that slash 5 days ago, it did not even dare to call itself I in front of Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji was very tired and was not in a good mood. He waved his hand and said, we'll talk about it in the future. Perform well. I'm not keeping you alive just to torture you. When the little black snake heard this, it was instantly overjoyed. It shut its mouth and didn't say anything else. It was in a good mood and felt that a beautiful future was right in front of it. In the following period of time, there were no more attacks from the Great Zhou dynasty. After all, they had already left the Great Zhou dynasty, and no one knew where they were. Only after 13 days did Zhou Xuanji fully recover. The lively feeling made him even more determined to not be too reckless in the future. 2 months later, it was Zhou Xuanji's 14th birthday. Analyze that the sword owner has reached 14 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained Silver Falcon Sword, Silver Magnetic Sword, Gold Ghost Curse Sword. Zhou Xuanji, who was cultivating, opened his eyes wide. 3 legendary swords. Interesting. And a gold-grade legendary sword. Did the Supreme Legendary Sword system level up? It's getting more and more generous. Zhou Xuanji took advantage of the situation and immediately took out 3 legendary swords. At the same time, lines of words appeared before his eyes. Sword name. Falcon Sword Grade. Silver description. The sword is like a flying eagle, sharp and powerful. The cry of the eagle can intimidate the enemy and deter evil. Sword name. Magnetic Sword Grade. Silver description. It was forged with goblin magnetic iron and contains powerful suction force. Sword name. Ghost Curse Sword Grade. Gold description. It was formed by thousands of evil spirits. Those who are pierced by the sword will be cursed by evil spirits. They all looked good. He got 2 more legendary swords with special effects. Zhou Xuanji smiled satisfactorily and looked at the 3 legendary swords. The falcon sword was a silver sword. The hilt looked like a majestic eagle with its wings spread. The magnetic sword was an earthy gold color. Compared to the falcon sword, it looked ordinary. The ghost curse sword was just like its name. It was filled with an evil aura. The blade was black, and there were 3 small ghost heads on the hilt. It looked like an evil sword at first glance. Compared to the bloodbath sword, it was even more evil. At this moment, Xiao Jinghong walked over. He glanced at the 3 legendary swords in front of Zhou Xuanji and calmly looked away. He smiled and said, "Revered teacher, it's time for me to depart. The border custom war is in a month's time." Chapter 89. The little black snake raised its head and said proudly, "Give me another 300-year-old ginseng and a 50-year-old hen. I want to drink the soup." Huang Lianxin stared at it and took away the iron bowl in front of it straight away. She left quickly. The little black snake panicked and quickly chased after her. "Little girl, don't rush. I'll tell you. I'll tell you now." However, it was still tied to the 3-eyed drought rodent and could not keep up with Huang Lianxin. In the next month, Zhou Xuanji began to break through to the inner pellet stage. Once he broke through to the inner pellet stage, his spirit energy would increase tremendously. At the same time he could fly in the air. Qin Shitsuan was really rich. The pills, spirit stones, and rare resources in his storage ring were enough for him to spend freely. There were also many energy techniques and enchanted artifacts. He let Beixiao Wangjian, Zhao Zongjian, and Huang Lianxin pick 3 each. Jiang Shui picked 5, while Xiao Jinghong picked 6. When Zhou Xuanji began to break through to the inner pellet stage, Jiang Shui began to break through to the enlightening stage too. Although Huang Lianxin was at foundation building level 10, she was a step slower. Looking at Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui, who were internalizing qi on the hill, Zhao Zongjian shook his head and laughed. Beixiao Wangjian, who was training in front of him, asked curiously, "What are you laughing at?" Zhao Zongjian drew his sword and said, "Our little mistress is quite talented. She reached the enlightening stage at 18. It will not be a problem for her to enter Great Zhou's hero ranking board. I'm exclaiming at our master." Beixiao Wangjian stopped and asked, "What's wrong with our master?" Zhao Zongjian said, "Look carefully. Our master's back is facing the sun, and there's a purple qi rising." Beixiao Wangjian turned around and looked. He realized that there was indeed a faint purple qi above Zhou Xuanji's head. This scene made Beixiao Wangjian open his eyes wide. "What's that?" he asked in astonishment. Zhao Zongjian brushed past him and said, "The emperor's fate. He was born to be an emperor." Beixiao Wangjian was stunned. He was dumbfounded. 3 days later, Zhou Xuanji successfully broke through to inner pellet, and a golden core appeared in his dantian. All the spirit energy in his bones and tendons flowed into the golden core. Sword qi soared into the sky, and the white dragon golden robe fluttered in the wind. Jiang Shui, who was beside him, looked at him with admiration. She waved her little fist and continued to try to break through. Sword owner has broken through to inner pellet. Gotcha begins. Ding. Congratulations. The sword owner has obtained ordinary stone bookcutter sword, 1000 grade 2 spirit stones, and 6-path sword shadow body. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes wide and called out the divine beast's name in his heart. Ordinary stone. Isn't this the lowest grade of God's sword? He immediately took out the bookcutter sword. 3 lines of words appeared before his eyes. Sword name, bookcutter sword grade, common or description. When a scholar was reading a book, he realized that the most important page was missing. In a fit of rage, he slashed the book with his sword. What a lousy sword. For the first time, Zhou Xuanji had the urge to throw his sword away. He had been looking forward to it for so long. Looking at the bookcutter sword in his hand, he threw it to the ground. Is this a godly sword? It was obviously a dagger. Jiang Shui, who was at the side, couldn't help but open her eyes when she heard a clang. When she saw the bookcutter sword, she realized that it was an unfamiliar sword. She glared at Zhou Xuanji and said, "That was left to you by your mother. How can you throw it away like this?" Zhou Xuanji smiled bitterly. He could only pick up the bookcutter sword and silently store it in the supreme storage. After that, he inherited the memory of the 6-path sword shadow. 6-path sword shadow had the profoundness of cloning. It created 6 clones with sword qi, and it was a powerful attack. According to Zhou Xuanji's estimation, 6-path sword shadow was at least an earth-grade advanced tier sword technique. Impressive. The vastness of this memory was second only to the 10,000 sword dragon incantation. After he finished inheriting the memory of the sword technique, he took out the swine culling sword straightaway and began to practice. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji began to practice, Beixiao Wangjian, Zhao Congjian, and Huang Lianxin were all surprised. Zhou Xuanji did not usually practice the sword, but once he did, it must be a new sword technique. 6-path sword shadow's moves were tricky, and it was divided into 6 positions. After he practiced 100 times, 3 afterimages appeared around him, which made Zhao Congjian and the other two's eyes brighten up. It was a new sword technique indeed. After 300 times, he mastered 6-path sword shadow. Zhou Xuanji had 6 sword shadow clones around him, which were exactly the same as him. It was as though he was practicing sword techniques with 7 clones. It was a majestic sight. Zhao Congjian trembled in excitement. He clenched his fists and mumbled, "I want to learn. I want to learn." Beixiao Wangjian and Huang Lianxin were mesmerized by the sight. If they could learn such a sword technique, it would definitely increase their power tremendously. After 500 times, 6-path sword shadow produced a sword will. Each sword shadow was imbued with a sword will, which was like 6 legendary swords. They were extremely powerful. Zhou Xuanji leaped up and flew away with the 6-path sword shadow. He charged straight into the forest and knocked down the trees one after another. A cloud of dust was swept up as he rampaged for 500 meters. Beixiao Wangjian gritted his teeth and looked back, mumbling, "I can't watch any more. There are too many sword techniques I want to learn." Huang Lianxin was the same. She could only sigh. Her master's talent was really enviable. The little black snake, who was drinking soup, shook its head and said, "I only have one word for you. I'm convinced." After that, it lowered its head and drank the soup happily. Now, it was untied from the 3-eyed drought rodent, because it was already half a meter long. At this rate, it would grow into a giant python sooner or later, and eventually transform into the infamous hegemon-scaled black dragon. In the blink of an eye, another month passed. Jiang Shui successfully broke through to the enlightening stage, and Huang Lianxin began to break through too. What was most worth celebrating was that Zhao Congjian broke through to the soul fountain stage. This guy challenged Zhou Xuanji in high spirits, but he was defeated by 6-path sword shadow. He shut himself out. He continued to train hard. 3 days later, Zhou Xuanji found him and asked him to go to the Great Zhou Empire to take a look. Xiao Jinghong and Meng Tianlong's battle should have ended, but he had not returned yet. He might have encountered some trouble. Zhao Congjian nodded and left immediately. After that, Zhou Xuanji walked up to Beixiao Wangjian and scolded him for being a jinx. Beixiao Wangjian was embarrassed. He could only scratch his head and force a smile. 10 days later, Zhao Zongjian came back with a solemn face. The group gathered and asked Xiao Jinghong what happened. The Meng clan is too much, Zhao Zongjian said furiously. Meng Tianlang could not defeat Xiao Jinghong, and a powerful cultivator from the Meng clan captured Xiao Jinghong. This has caused a huge commotion. Many people in Great Zhou are condemning the Meng clan. Even the Great Zhou's royal court is talking about this. But Emperor Yan of Zhou did not take it to heart. Zhou Xuanji heard him, and his face turned cold immediately. Jiang Shui frowned and said, "Is there no royal law in Great Zhou?" Zhao Zongjian said softly, "I heard that Zhou Yalong is supporting the Meng clan." Zhou Yalong, the top prodigy of Great Zhou, the person who was most likely to become the next emperor of Great Zhou. Huang Lianxin looked at Zhou Xuanji and asked, "Master, what should we do?" Zhou Xuanji's eyes were flashing with a murderous intent. Flatten the Meng clan and save him. The Meng clan is in the Great Zhou royal city. Are we really going there? This is definitely a trap. Beixiao Wangjian reminded. The first person who recognized Zhou Xuanji was Meng Changhu from the Meng clan. The Meng clan was definitely the empress lackey. Zhou Xuanji said, "So what? No matter who it is, I have to save my disciple." Chapter 90. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was about to act rashly, Zhao Zongjian quickly said, "Master, we need to plan this at length. At least before you appear, Xiao Jinghong will be fine." He saw Xiao Jinghong as a competitor, and did not wish for Xiao Jinghong to die. Zhou Xuanji frowned and said, "What can we do? We can only sneak into the royal capital and wait for an opportunity." Huang Lianxin suggested, "Brother Zhao, why don't you go and find out more information? Xiao Jinghong is not an ordinary person. Since he was captured by the Meng clan, the Great Zhou Empire will definitely do something. Perhaps Emperor Yan of Zhou has already acted?" The others nodded and felt that this matter couldn't be rushed. Zhou Xuanji was not overwhelmed by anger either. He muttered, "Songjian, you go first. You must keep a low profile, and don't expose your identity." Within Great Zhou, who did not know that Zhao Zongjian had become Sword God Zhou's sword slave, the henchmen of the Great Zhou Empress must have been searching for Zhao Zongjian's whereabouts. Zhao Zongjian nodded and left immediately. After Beixiao Wangjian and Huang Lianxin bowed, they left to continue practicing their swordsmanship. They understood that at this moment, Zhou Xuanji needed to remain calm. Moreover, they did not know more about the Great Zhou Empire than Zhou Xuanji. Jiang Shui held Zhou Xuanji's hand and comforted him. "If you really want to go to Great Zhou's royal city, I will go with you. We can disguise ourselves. Recently, I have learned Qin Chitsuan's disguising technique, and I can guarantee that even the gods and immortals will not be able to recognize us." Zhou Xuanji laughed unpleasantly and said, "You said I was boasting, but you like to boast too?" Jiang Shui saw him smile, so she giggled and said, "I learned how to brag from you." Zhou Xuanji patted the back of her hand and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I won't do anything reckless." As he looked at Jiang Shui, Zhou Xuanji suddenly realized that he was as tall as her. Unknowingly, he actually did not notice this matter. He took a deep breath and said, "In recent years, my state of mind has not been good, and I have neglected the people around me." Jiang Shui heard him and felt a little sour in her heart, but she did not show it. She stretched out her hand and patted Zhou Xuanji's head. "Xuanji, you've grown up," she said with a smile. "A man's ambition is to travel far and wide. You're already doing very well." Zhou Xuanji looked back at the top of the hill and said, "It's been a long time since we watched the sunset together. Shall we?" Jiang Shui wrapped her arms around his neck and smiled. "You said it yourself. You're delaying my training." Zhou Xuanji said indifferently, "It's fine to train a little less. Moreover, you don't have to work so hard. I'll take care of you and protect you in the future." Jiang Shui smiled sweetly and did not reply. She sighed in her heart, "I don't want to be your burden. I also want to protect you." The two of them walked towards the top of the hill. Huang Lianxin turned her head and looked at the scene of the two holding hands. She felt a little dazed for some reason. Back then, Jiang Shui was taller than Zhou Xuanji. Back then, it was the older sister who led the younger brother up the mountain. Now both of them had grown up, and there was no difference in their height. Time really flies, Huang Lianqin muttered to herself. She couldn't help but think of her own matters, falling into a daze. 12 days later, Zhao Zongjian returned. He quickly came up to Zhou Xuanji and cupped his fist. Master, things have changed. The Emperor of Great Zhou has made his move. Jiang Shui, Beishao Wangjian, and Huang Lianqin immediately surrounded him. Zhou Xuanji asked, "How is Jinghong? Tell me in detail." Zhao Zongjian nodded and told him everything. It turned out that everyone in Great Zhou was unhappy about the sword noble being captured by the Meng clan. The battle between Xiao Jinghong and Meng Tianlang was a gentleman's agreement. As a clan of the empire's generals, the Meng clan was so arrogant and did not deserve their current status. The Sword Monarch also sent a message to Emperor Yan of Zhou. After Emperor Yan of Zhou knew about the impact of this incident, he could no longer sit still. He immediately dismissed all the generals in the Meng clan and sealed the clan. Xiao Jinghong was invited into the Great Zhou royal palace to meet Emperor Yan of Zhou personally. It was said that Zhou Yalong was severely reprimanded by Emperor Yan of Zhou because of this incident, and was strictly forbidden to leave his residence for 3 years. At this point, Zhao Zongjian's eyes sparkled and said, "Master, this might be a turning point." Beishao Wangjian and Huang Lianqin became excited too. If Xiao Jinghong told Emperor Yan of Zhou about Zhou Xuanji, would the emperor send someone to bring Zhou Xuanji into the palace? Zhou Xuanji was his biological son after all. Zhou Xuanji glanced at Jiang Shui without leaving a trace. Although she was smiling, she was not excited. He said calmly, "This might be a bigger problem." Although he wanted Emperor Yan of Zhou to see his talent before accepting him again. But that had to be during Great Zhou's heaven selection. In front of the whole world, Emperor Yan of Zhou must protect him. But now, Xiao Jinghong was meeting Emperor Yan of Zhou in private. Even the Empress of Great Zhou could track him down. If Emperor Yan of Zhou wanted to, he could surely find Zhou Xuanji earlier. That's right. The Emperor's clan is not particular about relationships. Emperor Yan of Zhou is about to ascend, and Zhou Yalong is already mature. Even if Master's talent is revealed, the gap between you and Zhou Yalong is too great. Not only in terms of cultivation, but also in terms of connections in the royal court. The little black snake twisted its body as it walked over. Its tongue flicked in and out, which made everyone shudder. Zhao Zongjian said, "No matter what, Xiao Jinghong is temporarily out of danger. Everyone knows that Emperor Yan of Zhou cherishes talents. With Xiao Jinghong's talent, Emperor Yan of Zhou might take a liking to him." Zhou Xuanji rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. He did not want to go to Great Zhou to become the emperor. He only wanted to kill the empress and leave Great Zhou. Now that Xiao Jinghong was captured, his plan was completely messed up. If an empire has a monarchical violet qi, it can rise up powerfully, and its fate will last for thousands of years. But if there are 2 monarchical violet qi, the empire might be destroyed. At this moment an old voice came. Everyone turned around and saw a silhouette standing at the top of the hill. He had a hunched back and was holding a walking stick. His white hair was tied behind his head, and his eyes were squinted. There were many yellow spots on his face, and he was dressed like an old man in the countryside. Zhao Zongjian drew his sword and asked with a deep voice, "Who are you?" The old man ignored him and looked at Zhou Xuanji with a smile. Zhou Yalong was born with monarchical violet qi, and was nurtured by Emperor Yan of Zhou as the heir to the throne. After that, Zhou Yalong became a powerful cultivator. "I did not expect you to be born at this time. You also have monarchical violet qi, which put the current emperor in a difficult position." Monarchical violet qi? Zhou Xuanji frowned. "What's that?" He suddenly remembered that the race in his attribute list was not human, but Great Zhou's royal bloodline. The old man walked down the hill slowly. As he walked, he said casually, "If it were 500 years earlier, Emperor Yan of Zhou might have made arrangements for the 2 of you. But now, only one of you can live, and it must be before he ascends. This is your destiny with Zhou Yalong." Zhou Xuanji raised his hands slightly, and the Hell King's sword and Thunderclap sword appeared in his hands. He asked with squinted eyes, "If you don't tell us who you are, don't blame us for being impolite." This person appeared nearby without anyone noticing, and even said these words. He did not come with good intentions. Chapter 91. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji was about to fight, the old man waved his hand with a smile and said, "Don't worry. I will not harm you. I'm your grand teacher." Grand teacher? Zhou Xuanji was stunned. Jiang Shui, Zhao Tsongjian, and the others were stunned too. The little black snake hid behind a rock and mumbled to himself, "Such a horrifying aura. I hope he won't be interested in my flesh." Zhou Xuanji asked with a frown, "You mean you are my mother's teacher?" As for Emperor Yin of Zhou, he was someone who stood at the top of the northern wilderness region. His teacher had either ascended or died. The old man nodded and smiled as he stroked his long beard. "The world calls me Daoya, old man. I raised your mother. Back then, I said that Emperor Yin of Zhou was not a good person. It's a pity that your mother fell into a tribulation of love and could not extricate herself from it. In the end she died." He said it casually, as though he did not feel heartache over his beloved disciple's death. Zhao Tsongjian's expression changed and said, "Daoya, old man, the legendary land god. I didn't expect him to really exist. To be called a land god, one must have lived for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years." Zhou Xuanji's brows did not relax but asked, "Back then, when my mother was in trouble, why did you not help?" Daoya old man stepped forward and came up to Zhou Xuanji as though he teleported. His right hand landed on Zhou Xuanji's shoulder. Zhou Xuanji wanted to step back instinctively, but he realized that he could not move. The others took out their weapons and were ready to fight. "Not bad. You are much more talented than your mother." Daoya old man smiled satisfactorily and answered Zhou Xuanji's question. "I'm not a real god who can save your mother anytime. Everyone has their own fate, and I cannot interfere. Your mother's fate is all on you. Back then, when your mother was pregnant with you, I knew that heaven would not tolerate you, but your mother insisted on giving birth to you. I could only use a special spell to conceal the heavenly will and ensure your survival." Zhou Xuanji's pupils dilated, and he looked shocked. The others were shocked too. Heaven would not tolerate. No wonder Zhou Xuanji was so devilish. Daoya old man took back his hand and said, "Your mother replaced you. If heaven wanted her dead, she had to die. The Empress of Great Zhou was her fate." Zhou Xuanji was displeased and asked, "You make it sound so mystical. If there really is a heavenly law, then as long as I'm powerful enough, can I go down to the netherworld to find my mother? Resurrect her?" Jiang Shui and the others were also stunned by Daoya old man's words. Was there really heaven's will in the unseen world? If that was the case, was there really any meaning in their efforts to change themselves? Daoya old man nodded and smiled. There is no limit to how strong he is. Maybe it really is possible. Zhou Xuanji took a deep breath and asked, "What's the use of monarchical violet qi? It's useless. It's just a type of fate. He's only suitable to be an emperor. His luck is far thicker than normal people's. When two emperors' purple qi collide, only one can survive. When you see Zhou Yalong, you will understand." Daoya old man chuckled and looked at Jiang Shui meaningfully. Jiang Shui blushed and quickly lowered her head. Facing Zhou Xuanji's grand teacher, she was very nervous, shy, and perturbed. She had an indescribable complex feeling. Marriage bestowed by the heavens. Not bad, not bad. Daoya old man laughed, and Jiang Shui raised her head in surprise. Zhou Xuanji curled his lip. He suddenly felt that Daoya old man might have been talking nonsense. However, he also felt that Daoya old man meant no harm. "Cultivate well. I will go to the Great Zhou Royal Palace on your behalf. No one can help you in your fated battle with Zhou Yalong." Daoya old man looked at Zhou Xuanji and nodded with a smile. His tone was filled with encouragement. After that he disappeared on the spot. Huang Lianxin sighed in amazement. He's really an old immortal. Beixiao Wangjian curled his lip and said, "Since he's Master's grand teacher, why doesn't he help Master?" Zhao Tsongjian glanced at him and said, It's not that he doesn't want to help. He has already helped a lot. But a powerful cultivator can only rely on himself. Master doesn't want him to help either. Zhou Xuanji looked calm and nodded slightly. What the? Who doesn't want him to help? Shortly after, he waved his hand and said, Continue your cultivation. We will surely go to the great Zhou royal city. Whether it's the will of the heavens or not, a life for a life. The Empress of Great Zhou must die. His tone was resolute. In his opinion, if he killed the Empress of the Great Zhou, it was her fate. The group nodded and dispersed. Zhou Xuanji walked up the hill and sat facing the sun to internalize qi. Inner pellet was far from enough. Zhou Yalong had lived for hundreds of years. His cultivation had already surpassed the astral infant stage. He must become more powerful. The little black snake came to his back. It raised its body and looked afar. I have lived for more than 1,000 years. Let me give you a piece of advice. It said. Smack. Zhou Xuanji slapped it down the cliff. Trying to act cool in front of me? The little black snake fell 100 meters and smashed into the rocks. You. Let me finish. It wailed. It cursed in its heart and even felt wronged. Can't you give me some dignity? I was a 5th-ranked demon king after all. What will of the heavens? I only believe that man can conquer nature. Zhou Xuanji snorted. There was something else that he said in his heart. It's not like I haven't died before. I was mediocre in my previous life. But in this life, I will be more glorious than the heavens. Time always passed very quickly during cultivation. A month later, Daoya old man returned. However, he did not bring Xiao Jinghong back. Zhou Xuanji walked down the mountain and came up to him. What did you do? He asked. Daoya old man chuckled. I brought your disciple back. Where's my disciple? Your grand teacher failed. Can't you tell? Then why are you smiling so confidently? He's not my disciple. Why should I cry? Zhou Xuanji sighed. In his memory, Lady Zhao Xian was gentle and virtuous. How did she endure Daoya old man? Daoya old man smiled. Grand disciple, let me tell you a piece of good news. Zhou Xuanji asked expressionlessly, speak. Daoya old man smiled proudly. Your grand teacher has great influence. I was so angry that Emperor Yan of Zhou gave Xiao Jinghong to the Sword Monarch. If you want to find Xiao Jinghong, ask the Sword Monarch for him. Grand teacher, can I hammer you to death? Zhou Xuanji asked with a smile. He almost took out the chicken-slaying sword. Forget it. Now, other than Zhou Yalong and the Empress, his opponents were the Sword Monarch. Daoya old man rubbed Zhou Xuanji's head and said, I have another piece of good news. Zhou Xuanji flipped his right hand, and the chicken-slaying sword appeared in his hand. The tip of the sword pointed downward involuntarily. On the way back, I went to look for the Sword Monarch. He's still very influential. The Sword Monarch was so angry that he said that if you want Xiao Jinghong, you must defeat him personally. Daoya old man said with a smile. As he spoke, he twisted his waist backward and dodged the chicken-slaying sword by a hair's breadth. Jiang Shui, Zhao Tsongjian, and the others stood nearby and listened in silence. They thought that Daoya old man's arrival could turn the tables, but he pushed them into the abyss instead. Maybe this is what Zhou Xuanji always talks about as a useless teammate. Jiang Shui mumbled. Zhao Tsongjian and the others nodded and did not know what to say. Daoya old man squatted down and pinched the chicken-slaying sword's blade with his right thumb and index finger. I have another piece of good news, he chuckled. The Hell King sword appeared in Zhou Xuanji's left hand. He activated Hell King possession straight away. Daoya old man did not panic at all. Have you heard of the 9 emperors of the Sword's Way? Even the Sword Monarch was worlds apart from them. I have the inheritance of one of the emperors. How about I give it to you? Chapter 92. 9 Emperors of the Way of the Sword. Zhou Xuanji deactivated the Hell King's possession and looked curious. He and Jiang Shui had heard Qiu Bailey mention the 9 Emperors of the Way of the Sword. Since ancient times, they were the 9 strongest sword emperors in the Sword Dao. They were legends in the hearts of countless sword cultivators. Zhao Tsongjian, Beixiao Wangjian, and Huang Lianxin had also heard of the legend of the 9 Emperors of the Way of the Sword. What do you think? It was good news, right? Do you want it? Daoya old man asked with a smile, like an old man trying to trick a little girl. Zhao Tsongjian said in disdain, "My master." "Shut up." Zhou Xuanji turned around and stared at him. Zhao Tsongjian felt wronged, and could only remain silent. Zhou Xuanji looked at Daoya old man and asked, "Where is the inheritance?" At the same time, he asked the sword spirit in his heart if he could accept the sword emperor's inheritance. "Of course you can. As long as it's about the sword Dao, sword master can become stronger without any worries. The supreme legendary sword system will help sword master continue on his path." The sword spirit replied quickly, which made Zhou Xuanji very satisfied. He was afraid that the system would place too many restrictions on him. However, the supreme legendary sword system was not bad. It was very open-ended, and it only had one rule. He could only walk the path of the sword. Daoya old man flipped his right hand, and a small golden sword appeared in his palm. "Send your divine sense into it, and you can start the inheritance test. You only have one chance. If you don't pass the test, the sword will turn into dust. So, you have to be prepared." Hearing Daoya old man's reminder, Zhou Xuanji took the sword. The others gathered around and looked at the small golden sword curiously. Daoya old man turned around, waved his hand, and said with a smile, "I'm leaving. Grand disciple, I'll wait for you to defeat the sword monarch of Great Zhou and become famous in the northern wilderness region. Don't worry about me. I'm living a carefree life." He walked elegantly, like an immortal traveling the mortal world. However, he did not receive a reply. Zhou Xuanji and the others focused their attention on the small golden sword. After walking for 100 meters, he looked back. Sigh. He sighed and disappeared on the spot. "Thank you." Zhou Xuanji looked up and said softly, looking at where he had left. Zhao Tsongjian could not help but ask, "Master, are you really going to inherit the legacy of the ancient sword emperors? With your talent, you will definitely be in existence on the same level as the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword in 1,000 years. Zhou Xuanji looked up at him and sighed. "From the sword bend over." Zhou Xuanji said softly. Zhao Tsongjian was confused, but he still lowered his head obediently. Jiang Shui, Beixiao Wangjian, and Huang Lianxin were all curious. Zhou Xuanji stretched out his hand and rubbed the back of Zhao Tsongjian's head. "Tsongjian, you are good at everything, except that you are stubborn. Humans are humans, because they know how to be flexible." He sighed. "I did say that everyone has their own way of the sword, but gathering the strengths of 100 schools of thought is also the way to forge one's own way of the sword. Of course, this requires an extremely strong mental fortitude, and one must maintain their original heart. You must grasp this point well." Zhao Tsongjian was deep in thought. Northern Valiant Sword and Huang Lianxin were also thinking about this. The little black snake at the side rolled its eyes and thought to itself, "I really believe your nonsense." Jiang Shui pulled Zhou Xuanji's clothes and reminded him, "Xuanji, you only have one chance. You must be careful." Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. The sword monarch of Great Zhou values Jinghong a lot. Together with the sword monarch's great reputation, he will not harm Jinghong. We don't have to rush to save him." The reason why there was no rush was because he was not powerful enough. He looked down at the small golden sword in his hand and fell into deep thought. Zhao Tsongjian got up and left. He kept mumbling to himself, "Maintain your original heart. Maintain your original heart." All these years under Zhou Xuanji's guidance, he had never taken the wrong path. His progress in the sword's way was very smooth, so he would seriously consider every word that Zhou Xuanji taught him. Northern Valiant Sword and Huang Lianxin left separately and continued their sword training. Jiang Shui did not disturb Zhou Xuanji, but returned to the mountain to internalize qi and cultivate. 3 months later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to inner pellet level 2. That night, he took out the small golden sword and prepared to receive the inheritance. He gathered Jiang Shui and the rest so that no one would disturb him. When he probed into the small golden sword with his mind, boom! Something exploded in his mind. When he opened his eyes again, he realized that he was standing high up in the sky. The blue sky was above his head, and beneath his feet was a sea of clouds. He was shocked and felt that there was an invisible floor beneath his feet. Could it be an illusion? At this moment, a black shadow appeared in front of him. It was hundreds of meters tall like a mountain. The black shadow only had a silhouette and could not be seen clearly. I am the Sky-Sundering Sword Emperor, Wang Xiaofei. Junior, if you wish to obtain my inheritance, you must pass my test. His voice was domineering like that of a god. Even Zhou Xuanji could not help but worship him. Sky-Sundering Sword Emperor? What a chinibyu! Zhou Xuanji ridiculed in his heart, but on the surface he looked expectant. No matter how bad the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword were, they should at least have heaven-grade sword techniques, right? The first test is to fight someone of a higher level. Your cultivation is at the 2nd level of the inner Dan stage. You need to defeat a soul swordsman at the 2nd level of the Spirit Spring stage. Do you dare to accept? Wang Xiaofei asked, and Zhou Xuanji replied without hesitation. Come. Then, a black shadow of a swordsman appeared in front of him. He was 8 meters tall, and was far less intimidating than Wang Xiaofei's shadow. Zhou Xuanji took out the thunderclap sword and used the 8-step sword lunge, coming up to the soul swordsman. 6 afterimages appeared around Zhou Xuanji. It was the 6-path sword shadow body. Zhou Xuanji stabbed toward the soul swordsman, and so did the 6-path sword shadow. Boom! The soul swordsman perished. Before it could even attack, it was defeated by Zhou Xuanji in an instant. Zhou Xuanji had cultivated the Sword Qi Golden Body incantation to the 3rd level, Sword Qi Soar. Both his physical strength and Sword Qi were powerful. Together with the gold-grade legendary swords, how could a Soul Fountain level 2 not be destroyed? The second test is a Soul Swordsman at the 5th level of the Spirit Spring stage. Do you dare to accept? Wang Xiaofei continued to ask. His tone was emotionless, as though he was unconscious. Fight! Just when Zhou Xuanji spoke, the Soul Swordsman appeared. He waved his right hand, and numerous legendary swords appeared above his head. He charged at the Soul Swordsman with the 10 swords mode. 10 legendary swords flew toward the Soul Swordsman like bolts of lightning. The Soul Swordsman swung its sword to block, but it could not withstand the impact of 10 legendary swords. It immediately jumped away. Swoosh! The Ghost Curse sword pierced through the Soul Swordsman, with the ranged sword propelling. It was destroyed again. Zhou Xuanji frowned and mumbled, too weak. It's like fighting a robot. If the Soul Swordsman was a real person, he would be even more powerful. The third test. Within 3 days, cultivate an Earth-grade low-tier sword technique to small accomplishment. Wang Xiaofei's voice came again. Next, an ancient book appeared in front of Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji stored his swords and flipped through the ancient book. He memorized all the sword moves and threw the book aside. He was extremely confident. Moonlight Wind Sword Dance. He took out the bookcutter's sword and began practicing. There were a total of 108 sword moves. He used 10 breaths time to complete 1 round, which was extremely fast. After all, he had already mastered many sword techniques. Many of the sword moves were similar, so it was easy for him to use them. After 100 rounds, the Moonlight Wind Sword Dance reached small accomplishment. After 300 rounds, the Moonlight Wind Sword Dance reached great accomplishment. After 500 rounds, the Moonlight Wind Sword Dance reached Sword Will. Zhou Xuanji stored his swords. He was a little dissatisfied and shook his head, saying, "An hour is still too slow." He looked at Wang Xiaofei and prepared for the next test. However, the Sky-Sundering Sword Emperor Wang Xiaofei did not continue with the next test. A long while later, "Brat, you are King cheating." Wang Xiaofei cursed suddenly, which stunned Zhou Xuanji. Ugh, this thing has consciousness. Chapter 93. Have you practiced the sword technique before? Deliberately putting on an act. Wang Xiaofei's 100-meter-tall shadow asked, his tone somewhat angry. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and said, "This is my first time seeing this sword technique. I don't believe it. No one can cultivate an earth-grade sword art's sword intent in such a short time." Wang Xiaofei said in a low voice. Judging from his tone, he was ready to end the inheritance test at any time. Zhou Xuanji said impatiently, If you don't believe me, take out another sword technique. How dare you question me? The supreme legendary sword system that I designed is just that overpowered. Another ancient book appeared before Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji took it and flipped through it. He realized that this sword technique was even more difficult than the Moonlight Wind Dance sword dance. It wasn't just a little difficult. Soul Eater Slash. The name sounded awesome, but who knew what kind of power it would have once it was mastered? He took out the swine-culling sword and began to practice. The first time he spent 20 breaths of time. The second time only took 10 breaths of time. After repeating it 100 times, the Soul Eater Slash had reached the small success stage. After 300 repetitions, the Soul Eater Slash was completed. After 500 repetitions, the Soul Eater Slash achieved sword intent. Zhou Xuanji sheathed his sword and was pleasantly surprised. If this sword technique was used by the Ghost Curse sword, it would simply be able to kill gods and demons. The lethality was too great. He pretended to be expressionless and said, "What do you say?" Wang Xiaofei was silent. Zhou Xuanji stared at him and said, "You don't want to admit it?" Wang Xiaofei's tone was complicated as he said, "Which almighty being are you the reincarnation of?" Zhou Xuanji replied, "I'm from the sanctum of China. My name is Sword God Zhou." Sword God. This level of comprehension is indeed godly. Wang Xiaofei said faintly. Then he changed the topic and said, "Forget about the remaining dozens of rounds. You passed the assessment directly." Dozens of stages. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes wide. So cunning. If this went on, who could stand it? You have two choices. One is the Emperor's sword that I left behind, and the other is a sword technique that I left behind. Wang Xiaofei continued. Zhou Xuanji frowned and asked, "You're one of the 9 emperors of the Way of the Sword. Why are you so petty?" Wang Xiaofei coldly snorted and proudly said, "No matter which one I choose, I will be able to move unhindered in the world." Zhou Xuanji thought for a while and decided to take the sword. No matter how strong a sword technique was, it still required spiritual energy as a foundation. King Sword. If it was a good sword, he could even fuse it with his legendary sword. It might even be able to give birth to an amethyst divine sword. Of course, it could also be used alone. When you get out, the Emperor's sword will appear in your hand. Alright, the inheritance is over. Wang Xiaofei's tone became cold again. Zhou Xuanji blinked and asked curiously, "I really want to know, are you dead or alive?" Humph. Wang Xiaofei waved his hand, and next, Zhou Xuanji felt everything around him shatter. As if he had awoken from a dream, he opened his eyes and saw Jiang Shui's face, causing him to tremble in fear. He called out, "What are you doing?" Zhao Zongjian, Beishao Wangjian, and Huang Lianxin turned around. Jiang Shui was also frightened. She clutched her chest and curled her lips. "Just look at you. Is there a need to be so exaggerated?" Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes. Getting so close would scare him to death. Zhao Zongjian quickly asked, "So fast? Did master fail?" Zhou Xuanji stared at him and said, "Are you looking down on me, your master?" He told them about the process of the test, and everyone sighed in amazement. Dozens of stages. What a scam. Beishao Wangjian asked curiously, "Master, where's the Emperor's sword? Take it out and let us see." "Oh yeah. Where's the Emperor's sword?" Zhou Xuanji looked down and saw that the small golden sword in his hand was not the Emperor's sword. "That old man lied to me?" Zhou Xuanji frowned. At this moment, the small golden sword suddenly exploded into countless golden specks of light. The specks of light quickly formed into a giant sword that was 1.5 meters long. The sword was entirely golden, and its blade was 30 centimeters wide. 2 golden dragons coiled around the hilt, which looked extremely majestic. "So this is the Emperor's sword? It weighs 5,000 kilograms. Zhou Xuanji mumbled to himself. If not for his powerful body, he might have been smashed into meat paste. When the others heard this, they all reached out and shook hands. Jiang Shui and Huang Lianxin could not even lift it up. Zhao Zongjian had it easy, but Beishao Wangjian was struggling. "Sword Spirit, what grade is this sword?" Zhou Xuanji asked curiously in his heart. "The Emperor's sword of the Sky-Sundering Sword Emperor should be more than gold grade, right? The Sword Spirit needs to examine it." Do you want to keep it in the supreme legendary sword system? Keep it. As Zhou Xuanji spoke, the emperor's sword disappeared. Zhao Zongjian curled his lip and said, "This inheritance is a little shabby. It seems like the 9 emperors of the sword's way are nothing more than this." Huang Lianxin guessed. Maybe the period when he established the inheritance was not when he was at his peak. Or maybe he just wanted to help his descendants, and not really let someone inherit his legacy. The little black snake came over and said disdainfully, "A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. 2 earth-grade sword techniques, and a sword emperor's sword. What else do you want?" Beishao Wangjian said, "Lianxin, let's starve it for 7 days?" Huang Lianxin nodded, "Okay." The little black snake became anxious. "Aren't you too stingy?" Great Zhou's royal city, in an ancient-looking inn, a storyteller stood at the center of the first floor, surrounded by close to 100 people. He waved his folding fan and said with his eyes wide open, facing the threat of Tai Yulong and the other royal soldiers, Sword God Zhou slashed with his sword. The sword's radiance illuminated the heavens and the earth. That scene could not be described with words. Hundreds of thousands of people in Wuxia city sighed in admiration. A sword of a god. I heard that Sword God Zhou killed Tai Yulong and the others in an instant. He even slashed down a mountain and almost sank Wuxia city. The audience cried out in astonishment. Their faces were filled with admiration. At this moment, a voice came from the corner of the inn. "Mister, who do you think is more powerful, Sword God Zhou or the Sword Monarch?" The storyteller stroked his goatee and pretended to be profound. Actually, Sword God Zhou and the Sword Monarch had a battle before. With this, everyone opened their eyes wide. "Are you serious? How come I have never heard of it?" A muscular man held a bowl of wine and questioned. The storyteller said with a smile, "It's true. I saw it with my own eyes. They fought to a draw and admired each other." The Sword Monarch said that once Sword God Zhou appears in the world, he will be famous. As expected, Sword God Zhou became the first person on the reputation ranking of Great Zhou this year. Even the sword noble Xiao Jinghong said that he was Sword God Zhou's disciple. The unparalleled Sword God Zhou, he truly lives up to his name. The crowd clapped and cheered as they listened to Sword God Zhou's stories. They all felt excited, as if they were Sword God Zhou themselves. Nonsense. Sword God Zhou is still far from the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou. He can't even be compared to the Sword Monarch's disciple. The voice came from the corner of the inn again. It was full of disdain. This time, he incurred the wrath of the crowd. Everyone turned to look, but in the next moment their expressions changed. They all knelt down, and did not dare to look at that person again. The storyteller was also shocked. He quickly knelt down and said with a trembling voice, "Your Highness." The person who spoke was the crown prince of the Great Zhou Empire, Zhou Tianyu. Zhou Tianyu looked like he was in his early 30s. He had a dignified face and a calm temperament. He wore a white shirt. The innkeeper was also shocked. He quickly ran over and asked with a stutter, "Your Highness, why are you here?" Zhou Tianyu drank a bowl of wine and said expressionlessly, "I passed by this inn and heard that someone was praising Sword God Zhou and belittling the Sword Monarch. So I came in to take a look." After that, he got up and walked towards the side door of the inn. When he reached the door, he suddenly stopped. With his back facing everyone in the inn, he said, "Sword God Zhou can't even protect his own disciple. He's not a hero. If he dares to challenge the Sword Monarch, I, Zhou Tianyu, am willing to take him as my teacher and let him be the Crown Prince's teacher. You can spread the word. I don't think he dares to." Chapter 94. The Crown Prince of Great Zhou challenged Sword God Zhou in public. He claimed that if Sword God Zhou dared to challenge the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou, he would become Sword God Zhou's disciple. He did not say that Sword God Zhou had to win the challenge, but as long as he dared to challenge. This matter shook the Great Zhou dynasty. In just a few days, it spread to all the dynasties under the Great Zhou dynasty. Many people thought that Zhou Tianyu was too high profile. Sword God Zhou might not be as powerful as the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou, but he still had the courage to challenge the Sword Monarch. After all, Zhou Yalong is going to replace him. So he couldn't help but come out and cause trouble. What a joke. Who has Sword God Zhou been afraid of? He even dared to go against the Empress of Great Zhou. Why would he be afraid of the Sword Monarch? Has the Great Zhou Crown Prince suffered a chi deviation? Clown. No wonder the Emperor of Great Zhou doesn't think highly of him. Almost everyone thought that Zhou Tianyu was playing to the gallery. Now Sword God Zhou was no longer the person who had just become famous. His battle achievements had pushed his reputation to the peak. Among the sword cultivators of Great Zhou, only the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou could suppress them. Sword God Zhou was an upright person, and he loved to help others. He was more reputable than Great Zhou's crown prince. After learning about the reaction of the outside world, Zhou Tianyu was so angry that he smashed the table and flew into a rage in his own house. This incident also made the world understand Sword God Zhou's reputation. Unknowingly, Sword God Zhou had become an unparalleled powerful cultivator in their hearts. Take me as your master? With his aptitude, I'm not interested. Zhou Xuanji snorted. Zhao Tsongjian was standing in front of him. Every 3 months, Zhao Tsongjian would go to the Zhou dynasty to find out about Xiao. This time, after hearing about Zhou Tianyu's provocation, he immediately came back to report. Zhao Tsongjian smiled. If Zhou Tianyu knew that you are his younger brother, what would he think? Zhou Xuanji said disdainfully. I don't have an elder brother like him. The other princes were all thinking of ways to win the hearts of the people, but this guy only knew how to talk. For example, Zhou Qingxin was not talented, but he worked hard. Then, Zhao Tsongjian passed on the news to the others. Jiang Shui pursed her lips. If he didn't provoke Xuanji, the world wouldn't know that the Great Zhou dynasty has a crown prince. Northern Sword Valiant had a look of disdain. Frog at the bottom of the well. Huang Lianxin smiled. Brother Zhou Yalong is only SO. The little black snake laughed. Ha ha ha. I admire him. Thus, the little black snake was starved for another 7 days. Time passed. After another 3 months, Zhou Xuanji broke through to inner pellet level 3. There was still a month before he turned 15. Now his height had increased by leaps and bounds, and he had already reached 1.7 meters. Dressed in the white dragon golden robe, he was elegant and handsome. His black hair was tied at the back of his head, leaving a lock of black hair in front of his ears, revealing his forehead. Anyone who saw him would sigh in admiration. What a bright and handsome young man. After breaking through successfully, Zhou Xuanji got up slowly and stood on the top of the slope. He opened his arms and enjoyed the sunlight. Unknowingly, I'm almost 15. Sigh, back then I boasted that I could dominate the world in 10 years. What a slap to my face. Zhou Xuanji sighed in his heart with squinted eyes. At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared behind him and hugged him. Zhou Xuanji pretended to be knocked down and cursed. Who dares to sneak attack me? Hand over your life. After saying that, he turned around to tickle Jiang Shui's waist. Jiang Shui had completely grown up. She looked about as tall as Zhou Xuanji. She wore a long yellow dress. Her hair was up, and her skin was fair. Her face was exquisite, and her eyes were captivating. When the two of them stood together, they looked so compatible, as though they were made for each other. I surrender. Stop. Jiang Shui quickly got rid of Zhou Xuanji's demonic claws. You only know how to tickle me. Zhou Xuanji snorted. That's what you get for sneak attacking me so often. Jiang Shui came up and pinched his face. Xuanji has grown up, and he is getting more and more rebellious. He used to let me play with him. Zhou Xuanji rolled his eyes at her and said, I think we need to sleep in separate rooms. You're already 18, and you still sleep on top of me every night. Now he was afraid to sleep with Jiang Shui. After all, his body had already matured, and he could not stand the physical contact with Jiang Shui. Most importantly, Zhou Xuanji could sense that this girl would purposely rub against him every night, pushing him to the corner of the bed. No. Jiang Shui pulled Zhou Xuanji's face and snorted. Her eyes were filled with joy, and she was proud in her heart. It seems like what Sister Lianqin taught me was right. To prevent Zhou Xuanji from being lustful in the future, she thought that she had to continue with her plan. Zhou Xuanji had lived 2 lives. He saw the look in her eyes and immediately understood what was going on. This girl was flirting with him. Oh my. This girl is not innocent anymore. Zhou Xuanji sighed. Why did he have a premonition that he was about to lose his chastity? Jiang Shui put her hands behind her waist and clasped her fingers tightly. She leaned forward and bent down to look at him. It seems like my Xuanji level has indeed increased, she said, looking up at him. Seeing her cute look, Zhou Xuanji could not help but lean down and peck her on the lips. His kiss was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. Jiang Shui was stunned. She opened her eyes wide, and she felt as though she was electrocuted. Zhou Xuanji smiled proudly and brushed past her. You dare to flirt with me? You are still far from it. He smiled and prepared to go down the mountain. At this moment, Jiang Shui pulled his hand. He turned around instinctively, and Jiang Shui dashed up to him. Just like before, she pecked him lightly on the lips and ran away quickly. Zhou Xuanji was stunned. Looking at her back as she ran away, his heart beat faster. What the hell? Is this the feeling of falling in love? Oh no, I was flirted with again. Zhou Xuanji was stunned on the spot and laughed foolishly. At the foot of the mountain, the little black snake, which was coiled on a giant rock, lowered its head. It could not bear to watch anymore. I have never seen such a shameless adulterer and adulterer. In broad daylight. Sigh. It heaved a long sigh, and could not help but think of the female demons in its cave. Looking back, it had mixed feelings. Zhao Tsongjian and Beishao Wangjian were both training their sword techniques, and did not notice the commotion on the mountain. Huang Lianxi noticed them, and she covered her mouth and giggled. A big and small heir were sleeping soundly next to each other. The sun set, and the moon rose. Zhou Xuanji returned to his house, and prepared to rest. Every night, he would internalize qi in his house. He would first tell Jiang Shui a story, then sleep for a while. He would wake up when the sky was just brightening to absorb the violet qi from the east. Xuanji, what story are you telling me tonight? Jiang Shui sat on the wooden bed, and asked as she combed her hair. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and said, I'll tell you a love story. Jiang Shui heard him, and her eyes brightened immediately. Tell me quickly. She cried out immediately. Zhou Xuanji sat beside her and said casually, Kiss me, and I will tell you. Jiang Shui blushed and pouted coquettishly. What's there to kiss? When I was young, I kissed you every day. Didn't you think my saliva was dirty? Zhou Xuanji said righteously. That was in the past. Now, so fragrant. Jiang Shui felt sweet in her heart. She raised her chin and snorted. I'm not going to kiss you. If you don't kiss me, I won't tell you. Fine, I won't tell you. Please kiss me. Call me sister. Sister. Good boy. Come, put your face closer. Chapter 95. Early in the morning, the first ray of sunlight swept over from the horizon, streaking across the mountains and rivers. On top of a mountain, a black bull with a shoulder height of 15 meters was gazing into the distance. Its forelimbs were muscular, and the black fur on its body was like steel needles. Its horns were like curved blades, and its eyes were cold and fierce. Standing on top of the mountain, it felt like a king. Tens of thousands of demon soldiers were crawling at the foot of the mountain. Most of them had already transformed, and were waiting for the Black Yak's orders. Children, do you remember our goal? The Black Yak suddenly opened his mouth. His domineering voice reverberated throughout the mountains. Kill Sword God Zhou. Tens of thousands of demon soldiers roared in unison, scaring away the birds in the surrounding forest. The Black Yak twisted its body and stood upright, transforming into its human form. Hua! A black cloak appeared out of thin air, and he quickly put it on. He had the head of a bull and the body of a human. His skin was dark and his face was wild. A terrifying blade that was 30 meters long appeared in his hand. The saber looked very exaggerated and oppressive. He raised his blade and roared furiously. My children, Sword God Zhou is hiding within a radius of 1,000 miles. Find him and inform me. Yes. Tens of thousands of demon soldiers shouted in unison, all of them quickly leaving. In less than 5 breaths of time, there was not a single demon soldier left at the foot of the mountain. The Black Bull laughed coldly. Sword God Zhou? I would like to see if you are really that strong. I will chop off your head. The Gulan demon emperor wants your head." After that, he laughed wildly, as though he had already obtained sword god Zhou's head. Zhou Xuanji was sunbathing on the slope with his hands under his head, looking quite relaxed. At the foot of the mountain, Zhao Congjian was teaching Beishao Wangjian. Jiang Shui was practicing her spells while Huang Lianqin was practicing her swordsmanship. The little black snake was being bullied by a big and small air. It was like a whip being tossed around, screaming miserably. The three-eyed drought rodent squeaked on a big's head. "The Emperor's sword's grade has been detected." The sword spirit's voice suddenly resounded in Zhou Xuanji's mind. Next, 3 lines of words appeared before his eyes. Sword name, Sky-Sundering Emperor Sword. Grade, Amethyst. Description, contains a sword soul, and is forged from 5,000 kilograms of dark steel. It is indestructible, and when swung, the strength of the slash will be doubled. It possesses a special ability, the power of the ancient sword emperor. Can only be used once a year, and there are no side effects. The power of the ancient sword emperor? Once a year? Zhou Xuanji blinked and inwardly asked, "How powerful is the power of the ancient sword emperor?" He was in a wonderful mood. He did not expect that the first amethyst god sword would not be from the Supreme Legendary Sword System's lottery. 10,000 kilograms of Xian iron doubled his strength. To a Dharma cultivator, this was a devastating blow. It depends on the strength of the sword master. With every level he ascends, he'll be able to unleash more of the power of the ancient sword monarch, reaching the Mahayana realm at the very most. The sword spirit replied, which made Zhou Xuanji open his eyes wide. Mahayana realm? That was an existence that was about to ascend. He immediately became excited and took out the Sky-Sundering Emperor sword. This golden dragon sword was so mighty that 5,000 kilograms of weight was nothing to Zhou Xuanji. He held the Sky-Sundering Emperor sword in one hand and performed the moonlit wind sword dance. The giant sword danced with a domineering aura that could split mountains and rivers. At the foot of the mountain, Jiang Shui and the other 3 could not help but raise their eyebrows. Zhao Congjian's eyes lit up and he mumbled, "How domineering! I really want to learn." No. There were too many sword techniques he wanted to learn. Zhao Congjian held back his excitement and turned around. Beishao Wangjian was also envious, but it was a pity that they did not have Zhou Xuanji's talent. They needed at least a few months to learn a set of sword techniques, and it would take years for them to reach black grade. After practicing the moonlit wind sword dance, Zhou Xuanji's hands were itching. He immediately gathered everyone and told them that he was going to a stronghold to train. He tried to come back at night. No one had any objections. Although Zhou Xuanji was only at inner pellet level 3, he was the most powerful among them. He left on the wind cutter sword and quickly disappeared into the horizon. Outside the border of Great Zhou, there were many criminals, evil cultivators, and tyrants who established strongholds or sections. There were countless of them. Zhao Congjian, a big and small heir, discovered many of them. When Zhou Xuanji brought little Jiang Shui out to play occasionally, he saw traces of bandits. They flew for about 100 miles. Zhou Xuanji stopped suddenly and looked in the direction he was looking. In front of him was a barren land with few trees. The terrain was uneven. A majestic silhouette sat on a small hill. It was a bull demon in human form. He was extremely domineering, especially the horrifying broadsword beside him. Even though he was 1,000 meters away, Zhou Xuanji could not help but shudder in fear. Undefeatable? Could this demon be a 6th rank, or even a 7th rank great demon king? Just as he was thinking, the bull demon's voice came. "Young man, come here. I have something to ask you. If you don't come, I will cut you down with my broadsword." Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and flew over immediately. He could use this demon to test the power of the Sky-Sundering Emperor sword. Soon he came up to the bull demon. The bull demon stared at him with eyes that were as big as bronze bells and shouted, "I am Zongnyo Dark Emperor. Have you heard of my name? In Great Zhou's territory, my name is used to scare kids like you." Zhou Xuanji stood on the wind cutter sword and pretended to be terrified. "Great King, what are you going to do?" Zongnyo Dark Emperor was satisfied. Zhou Xuanji's chi obscuring incantation was like nothing in front of him. He had already seen through Zhou Xuanji's cultivation, but he did not take it to heart. An inner pellet realm cultivator was still an ant to him, and it could not be Sword God Zhou. Too weak. Do you know where Sword God Zhou is? Zhongyou Dark Emperor asked with a deep voice, staring at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji looked as though he was about to cry. He replied with a trembling voice, "No. Why are you looking for him?" Zhongyou Dark Emperor snorted coldly. "To kill him, of course. I heard that Sword God Zhou is short, but his sword technique is one of the best in Great Zhou. It's a pity that there's a powerhouse in the demon race who wants his head." Zhou Xuanji looked terrified, but he was thinking in his heart, a powerhouse in the demon race? Could it be the Gulan demon monarch? Other than that, he could not think of any other powerhouse in the demon race. "Young man, don't be afraid. Back then, I had a master as big as you. Do you know what happened to him?" Zhongyou Dark Emperor laughed, but the broadsword in his hand never fell. "You ate him?" Zhou Xuanji asked carefully. "How did you know?" Zhongyou Dark Emperor was shocked. He always used this story to scare people, but this time, Zhou Xuanji guessed it in advance. This made him very unhappy. "Be good. Kneel down. I will cut you down with my broadsword and let you die without pain." Zhongyou Dark Emperor waved his hand at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji's skin was soft and tender, so he must taste good. Zhou Xuanji's face turned pale. He stuttered, "My king. Why do you want to eat me? I have already told you the truth." Zhongyou Dark Emperor laughed proudly. "So what? I am going to cut you down. Hurry up and kneel down. If you dare to escape, I will make your life worse than death." Zhou Xuanji laughed coldly in his heart. "Stupid bull. I am going to kill you." "Stop." At this moment, a loud and righteous cry came. Zhou Xuanji and Zhongyou Dark Emperor turned around instinctively and saw a priest in a green robe flying toward them. The priest in a green robe was a little skinny. He had stubble by the side of his mouth, but his eyes were sharp. He held a horsetail whisk in his hand. Zhongyou Dark Emperor glanced at him and said with disdain, "I was wondering who it was. So it's Zhou Yalong's son Zhou Zhongdao. If I kill you, will Zhou Yalong come after me?" Zhou Zhongdao shouted, "Let that kid go. If you have the guts, fight me." "Kid." Zhou Xuanji squinted his eyes and cursed in his heart. "I am your uncle." It was his first time meeting Zhou Zhongdao. Zhou Yalong had many wives and children. Zhou Zhongdao was the most famous and powerful son. Zhou Yalong thought highly of him. Chapter 96. Zhou Zhongdao moved like an arrow and quickly arrived in front of Zhongyou Dark Emperor. He waved the horsetail whisk in his right hand, and a white light shot out from it. It turned into a long whip and lashed at Zhongyou Dark Emperor's body. Pa! Zhongyou Dark Emperor did not dodge. Even though he was hit, his expression did not change. He grinned and sneered. "Didn't you drink milk when you were young? Compared to your father, you're too weak." When Zhou Zhongdao heard this, he frowned and continued to wave his right hand. The white whip continued to hit Zhongyou Dark Emperor's body. Zhou Xuanji stood on the wind-cutter sword and observed the battle quietly. It was indeed an ox demon. High HP, thick skin, and high endurance. Seeing that Zhou Xuanji had not left, Zhou Zhongdao was furious. He cursed loudly. "Get out of here. Do you think you can do whatever you want after breaking through to the inner pellet realm? If you don't get lost, you'll die here." When one sees injustice on the road, he will draw his sword to help. What he fears most is meeting a fool. Zhou Xuanji heard him, and his face turned cold immediately. "This nephew of mine is a little jumpy and needs to be taught a lesson." At this moment, Zhongyou Dark Emperor suddenly grabbed the white whip and pulled it, pulling Zhou Zhongdao down from the sky. Bang! Zhou Zhongdao crashed into the small hill under Zhongyou Dark Emperor's feet, and it was a head-on collision. Zhou Xuanji felt pain just by looking at it. "Who asked you to have such a big mouth?" Zhongyou Dark Emperor leapt up. Zhou Zhongdao was about to cover his face when he was kicked out of the mountain wall. His body was so tall and sturdy that he weighed at least tens of thousands of pounds. Zhou Zhongdao was stomped on the ground by him, causing the ground to collapse. Blood splattered everywhere, and the sound of bones breaking was incomparably clear. Zhou Xuanji frowned and cursed in his heart. You're so weak and you still dare to act like a hero. Although his father and grandmother were Zhou Xuanji's enemies, this boy dared to stand up for them, which meant that he was not a bad person. Zhou Xuanji could clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred, so he decided to save him. Kid, you don't have your father's ability, but you do have your father's courage. If you die here today, Zhou Yalong won't even know. You asked for it. Zhongyao Dark Emperor raised his saber high and laughed ferociously. His laughter was extremely arrogant, and even a little excited. He had met Zhou Yalong before, but he was no match for him. How could he not be excited now that he could kill the son of the future emperor of Great Zhou? Xiao! An ear-piercing sound could be heard. Zhongyao Dark Emperor's eyes narrowed. He waved the blade in his right hand, and sent the bloodbath sword flying. He turned around and looked at Zhou Xuanji, who was standing on the wind cutter sword. Brat, you dare to attack me? He roared. He slashed out with his saber, and a black saber chi swept out. It was 100 feet long, like a black crescent moon, and was extremely powerful. Zhou Xuanji immediately dodged with the 8-step sword lunge. He reappeared behind Zhongyao Dark Emperor. The sky-sundering Emperor sword appeared in his hand, and he directly used the power of the ancient sword Emperor. The method to use it was very simple. One just had to pour one's dermic powers into the blade, then withdraw it and pour it in again. After repeating this 3 times, one would be able to unleash the power of the ancient sword Emperor. Rumble! Zhou Xuanji felt a horrifying power explode in his body, and a visible aura flame appeared around his body. The ground beneath his feet cracked, and pieces of rocks and grass flew into the air. He raised his sword and slashed forward. This sword was like a hidden dragon emerging from the abyss. The rainbow pierced through the sun, and the power poured out. It felt so good that it could explode. Zhongyao Dark Emperor subconsciously swung his blade to block. Clang! The blade and the sword clashed, and Zhongyao Dark Emperor was sent flying. It was a majestic sight to see his gigantic body flying up. Zhou Zhongdao, who was lying on the ground, was dumbfounded. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. How can it be? Zhou Zhongdao could not believe his eyes, but the pain in his body told him that everything was real. Zhongyao Dark Emperor flew out nearly 100 meters. After he landed, he slid back a dozen meters, kicking up a trail of dust. He looked up at Zhou Xuanji in astonishment. Who are you? He roared furiously with gritted teeth. Zhou Xuanji held the sky-sundering Emperor sword in his right hand, and the thunderclap sword in his left. The wind cutter sword and bloodbath sword levitated above his shoulders, and the tips of the swords pointed at Zhongyao Dark Emperor. His expression was cold, but his heart was filled with excitement. So powerful. At this moment he felt boundless power. No matter who stood in front of him, he could defeat them all. He walked toward Zhongyao Dark Emperor and burst out in laughter. Aren't you looking for Sword God Zhou? Zhou Xuanji said with a mocking smile, which stunned Zhongyao Dark Emperor. Zhou Zhongdao, who just got up, was also stunned. He had heard of the name of Sword God Zhou. These 2 years, the most famous person in Great Zhou was Sword God Zhou. So it's him. Zhou Zhongdao was stunned. He was ashamed in his heart, and wanted to find a hole to hide in. How dare he call the famous Sword God Zhou a kid? He immediately understood that Sword God Zhou must have wanted to tease Zhongyao Dark Emperor. But he interrupted him. It was too embarrassing. At the same time, he was a little touched. Even so, Sword God Zhou did not hold a grudge, and helped him when he was in danger. Sword God Zhou! Zhongyao Dark Emperor roared. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He dashed toward Zhou Xuanji with all his might. Zhou Xuanji also dashed toward Zhongyao Dark Emperor with the 8-step sword lunge. 10,000 Sword Dragon Incantation. Dual Swords Mode. 2 dragon roars could be heard. The sky-sundering Emperor sword and the thunderclap sword were surrounded by a dragon-shaped sword chi. The 2 swords slashed toward Zhongyao Dark Emperor. The muscles on Zhongyao Dark Emperor's arms bulged. He was about to smash Zhou Xuanji into a meat patty. Clang! Zhongyao Dark Emperor was sent flying away again. The violent force made him feel an excruciating pain between his thumb and forefinger, and his face twisted. This guy's strength! Zhongyao Dark Emperor was shocked. No wonder the Gulan Demon Monarch wanted to kill Sword God Zhou so badly. Everyone was in awe of sword god Zhou's sword techniques, but they did not know that his body was also very strong. Dual cultivation of essence and body. Zhou Xuanji quickly charged over. This time, he directly used the Soul Eater slash. Lightning intertwined on the two swords, and the aura flame on Zhou Xuanji's body grew tremendously. He slashed out with both swords, and a violent gale swept out, causing the ground to crumble. 5 streams of black sword chi shot out vertically. At first glance, it looked like a demonic claw had appeared out of thin air. In front of it, even Zhongyou Dark Emperor seemed small. Zhongyou Dark Emperor's expression changed drastically, and he subconsciously raised his blade to block. There was a loud bang. His entire body was covered in blood, and he was sent flying. His huge body was like a rolling stone, crashing into rocks and trees along the way. He flew a full 800 meters away. He gripped his saber with both hands and stabbed it into the ground, barely stabilizing his body. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood on the ground, his whole body trembling. His robe had many cuts, and his body was covered in cuts. What sword technique is this? Those 2 swords are demonic swords. Zhongyou Dark Emperor thought in shock. He heard that sword god Zhou had many swords, and each of them was a legendary sword. He immediately got up and transformed into his original form. He turned around and fled. The great saber shrunk and entered his ear. In his original form, although his body was still huge, his speed was really fast. He covered 200 meters in 3 steps, leaving deep hoof prints on the ground. Demon, where are you going? With a loud cry, Zhou Xuanji flew on his sword and chased after them. Zhou Zhongdao stood up with difficulty. He looked at Zhou Xuanji's back with admiration. Zhongyou Dark Emperor was like a stray dog before him. Damn! Zhongyou Dark Emperor gritted his teeth and tensed his limbs. He ran with all his might, which created a strong gust of wind. At first glance, it looked like a layer of chi enveloped him. Unstoppable. At this moment, anyone who appeared in front of him would be frightened by his aura. Along the way, many cultivators who wandered the world were so frightened that they ran away in panic. Zhou Xuanji followed closely behind him. The man and the demon were as fast as the wind. Sword God Zhou, do you really want to kill us all? Zhongyou Dark Emperor roared furiously as he sprinted. All the cultivators within a radius of 10,000 meters were stunned. Sword God Zhou, why should I be merciful when I slay demons? Zhou Xuanji's voice resounded across the heavens and earth. It was so cold and filled with a murderous aura. Zhongyou Dark Emperor cursed in his heart. Such a hypocrite. Chapter 97. Although he had the power of the ancient Sword Emperor, Zhou Xuanji's speed could not catch up to Zhongyou Dark Emperor. Zhongyou Dark Emperor ran with all his might. The man and the demon crossed over the mountains and forests. Their speed was in a stalemate. He's heavily injured. I don't believe he won't stop. Zhou Xuanji's eyes were cold as he thought. Zhongyou Dark Emperor wanted to kill him, so he naturally couldn't let him go. At the same time, he wanted to make a big deal out of this matter, so that the powerful figure of the demon race would not dare to act recklessly again. Along the way, he madly attacked for hundreds of miles. Zhongyou Dark Emperor's speed began to decrease, and the distance between him and Zhou Xuanji shortened. Xiao! Bloodbath sword suddenly flew over and stabbed Zhongyou Dark Emperor's back. Zhongyou Dark Emperor roared in pain. He was pleased with himself. How can you hurt my skin and flesh? The next second, his expression became one of horror. Because he could feel the bloodbath sword sucking his blood, he was so frightened that his ox body trembled and forced the bloodbath sword out of his body. The bloodbath sword quickly flew into Zhou Xuanji's body. In an instant, Zhou Xuanji felt that his stamina had recovered to its peak. As expected of an ox demon, it felt so good to have so much health. Zhou Xuanji's eyes sparkled. Next, he tossed out the bloodbath sword continuously. Zhongyou Dark Emperor began to dodge, but every 3 times he dodged, he would hit once. After all, he could not look back, for fear that his speed would slow down. Just like that, Zhongyou Dark Emperor's HP decreased. However, he did not despair, because there was a Yao Kingdom up ahead. As long as he entered the Yao Kingdom, he would have a chance of survival. He cursed in his heart. The Gulan demon monarch tricked me. He even said that sword god Zhou did not live up to his name. Your mother is trying to cover up your son's shame. He immediately hated the Gulan demon monarch. He hated him even more than Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji also noticed the waves of demonic qi coming from ahead. He had heard Zhao Tsongjian mention that there was a demon kingdom nearby, with hundreds of thousands of demon soldiers. The strongest demon had reached the 5th level of cultivation, which was comparable to the human race at the Spirit Spring stage. He did not stop and continued to move forward. A 5th-ranked demon king was no longer a threat to him. Rumble! Zhongyao Dark Emperor rushed into the forest with an unstoppable force, knocking down trees one after another. Dust flew everywhere. Looking down from the sky, it seemed like the forest was going to be split into two. Zhou Xuanji flew above the forest. He asked in his heart, "Sword Spirit, how long can the power of the ancient Sword Emperor last?" Although Zhongyao Dark Emperor was severely injured, he would not be able to kill him without the power of the ancient Sword Emperor. Based on the extent of the Sword Master's execution of the sword technique, it can at least last for half an incense stick's time. The Sword Spirit's words put Zhou Xuanji at ease. Looking at Zhongyao Dark Emperor's speed, it would probably slow down soon. He gripped the sky-sundering Emperor sword tightly and prepared to use the ranged sword propelling technique. The Bloodbath sword and the Thunderclap sword flew over, forcing Zhongyao Dark Emperor to dodge to the left and right. 5 kilometers away, on a wasteland, there was a city with mountains on both sides. Above the city gate, there were countless spears made of white bones and 3 huge beast heads. Many demon soldiers were fighting on the city wall. At this moment, there were dozens of demon soldiers escorting 4 prisoner carriages towards the city gate. There were 70 to 80 prisoners in these carriages. All of them were curled up in fear. "I can finally have a good meal today. Ha ha ha. I've taken a fancy to that girl. When the time comes, let's have some fun together before eating." Recently, many people have left the border of Great Zhou. I wonder what happened. No matter what, it's a good thing for us. These people are all cultivators. They taste good. The demon soldiers chatted and laughed. Their words made the prisoners feel even more hopeless. Boom! The wilderness suddenly shook, startling everyone, including the demon soldiers, to turn their heads to look. So did the demon soldiers on the city wall. They saw a muscular black bull with a shoulder height of 15 meters galloping toward them. That imposing manner seemed to be able to break through all obstacles in front of it. "I am Zhongyao Dark Emperor. Open the city gate for me," Zhongyao Dark Emperor shouted anxiously. At this moment he was covered in blood, and blood splattered everywhere along the way. All the demon soldiers were stunned. Among the demon race, Zhongyao Dark Emperor was quite famous. Any older demon would have heard of him. At this moment, they noticed that someone was following Zhongyao Dark Emperor. It was Zhou Xuanji. 10 people stood on a tall mountain to the left of the demon kingdom. They were all dressed in black, and the leader was a middle-aged man with long white hair. He had 2 swords on his back. "Zhongyao Dark Emperor? Why is he here? Who's chasing after him?" the middle-aged man asked in astonishment. He frowned. The man in black beside him shuddered and cried out. "He has 4 swords. Could it be Sword God Zhou?" Sword God Zhou. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Not only him, but the demon soldiers also guessed that it was Sword God Zhou. The most famous sword cultivator in Great Zhou was Sword God Zhou. If it was the Sword Monarch, Zhongyao Dark Emperor would already be dead. Zhou Xuanji could already see the walls of the demon kingdom. At this moment, Zhongyao Dark Emperor's speed was much slower than before. Just when Zhongyao Dark Emperor dodged the Thunderclap sword, Zhou Xuanji threw out the sky-sundering Emperor sword. Ranged sword propelling. The amethyst legendary sword exploded with horrifying speed. Pshhhh. Ah! Zhongyao Dark Emperor opened his eyes so wide that his eyeballs almost popped out. The excruciating pain made him bite his tongue. In that instant he almost fainted. His 2 front hooves knocked into each other, and he fell to the ground. Zhou Xuanji was stunned, and looked a little embarrassed. because the sky-sundering Emperor's sword pierced the bottom of Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's tail. Blood spurted out, and even he felt a chill in his back. Miscalculation. This will tarnish the reputation of sword god Zhou. Zhou Xuanji felt awkward in his heart, but he looked expressionless on the surface. He quickly flew to Zhongnyo Dark Emperor. Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's head was on the ground. His hind legs were stiff, and he raised his butt high. Only by doing so could he alleviate his pain. He felt that his body was in turmoil, and it was extremely uncomfortable. It was worse than death. The sky-sundering Emperor's sword shone coldly under the sunlight. The entire plain was silent. Seeing Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's pitiful state, all the demon soldiers were dumbfounded. Even those who were in prison were petrified. Zhou Xuanji held the thunderclap sword and slashed down. Soul Eater slash. Lightning surrounded the sword chi and slashed down on Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's head. Blood gushed out from Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's neck and splattered on the ground. The lightning ravaged Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's body, and his vitality was quickly drained. A dignified demon king had died so miserably. How pitiful. Zhou Xuanji waved his right hand, and the sky-sundering Emperor's sword flew out of Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's body. A stream of blood spurted out, and Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's body twitched and fell to the ground. Looking at the disgusting thing on the blade, Zhou Xuanji shook his right hand and flung it away. He then swung his sword at Zhongnyo Dark Emperor again. This was his habit, to prevent the enemy from feigning death. After making sure that Zhongnyo Dark Emperor was no longer alive, he looked up at the demon kingdom in front of him. When the demon soldiers saw his gaze, they turned around and fled in fear. They did not even care about the prison carriages. Zhou Xuanji flew over on his sword and destroyed the 4 prison carriages with the vibrant raindrops sword. Those who were saved cried tears of joy. They got off the carriage and knelt before Zhou Xuanji, calling out sword god Zhou's name. Zhou Xuanji ignored them, but looked at the demon kingdom in front of him. He flipped his right hand, and the sky-sundering Emperor sword spun. The tip of the sword pointed forward. He tossed it forcefully. The sky-sundering Emperor sword flew out. Boom! The city gate exploded immediately. The walls on both sides were filled with cracks, and it looked like it would collapse at any moment. This terrifying power made all the humans and demons dumbfounded. What kind of power is this? Chapter 98. The city gate was broken open, and the city walls shook. All the demon soldiers on top leaped down in panic. No one dared to stop Zhou Xuanji. Zhongnyo Dark Emperor's tragic death was right in front of them. Who dared to go against sword god Zhou? Zhou Xuanji stepped on the wind cutter sword, with the sky-sundering Emperor sword and thunderclap sword in his hands, and the bloodbath sword above his head, and he approached the demon kingdom. Roar! A deafening roar came from the demon kingdom. The roar shook the mountains on both sides and rocks fell down. A muscular figure leaped up and flew over the city walls before landing on the ground. His legs crushed the grass beneath him. It was a demon king with a lion's head and a human body. He wore a tiger skin robe with scale armor inside. His mane was majestic and domineering, and his mouth was filled with fangs. He looked extremely ferocious. Tianhe Lion King. He was the lord of this demon kingdom. He had cultivated for 1,000 years, and his power was unfathomable. He stared at Zhou Xuanji furiously. His body trembled in rage. Numerous shape-shifted demons flew up from the city and levitated in the air. Each of them held a weapon and looked ahead anxiously. A tense atmosphere before a battle spread across the heavens and the earth. Zhou Xuanji flew to Tianhe Lion King's head and looked down at him coldly. Thump! Tianhe Lion King knelt on the ground with his hands on the ground. Sir! He gritted his teeth and said, "We are not friends with Zhongnyo Dark Emperor. Please spare our lives." All the shape-shifted demons were stunned, but no one tried to dissuade him. Sword god Zhou was too powerful after all. Zhou Xuanji said expressionlessly, "Release everyone in the city. If you dare to hide even one person, I will chop off your head immediately and let all your demon descendants die with you." His voice was soft, but the murderous aura in it made Tianhe Lion King shiver. He immediately turned around and shouted with all his might, "Release everyone in the kingdom." Do not delay. He abandoned his dignity as the lord of the demon kingdom at this moment. Zhou Xuanji waited patiently. Those who were saved behind him did not leave, but discussed excitedly. He is the unparalleled sword god Zhou. He's so powerful. Tianhe Lion King did not even dare to fart in front of him. From today onwards, whoever dares to say that sword god Zhou's fame is greater than his power, I will be the first to beat him up. With this level of strength, he's definitely a top-notch expert. If he were to enter the great Zhou army, it wouldn't be difficult for him to reach the second or third rank. Oh my god, is that really Zhongyou Dark Emperor? In front of sword god Zhou, he died in such a cowardly manner. How big is the difference in their power? Zhou Xuanji, who had his back to them, smiled. It seemed that he had underestimated his fame. Before he even announced his name, these people already recognized him. Sigh. It wasn't good to be too famous. He couldn't even keep a low profile. Just as Zhou Xuanji was feeling melancholic, the 10 men in black on the mountain to the left of the demon kingdom fell into silence. After a long while, the middle-aged man who was the leader said in a deep voice, "There's a change of plan. Sword god Zhou's power far exceeds the mission's threshold. Retreat immediately. From today onwards, we will no longer accept missions from the Empress of Great Zhou." Damn it! You tricked us. The other 9 black-robed men nodded. They were all here to search for sword god Zhou's tracks and assassinate him. But when they saw it today, they almost wet their pants. They quickly disappeared into the mountain forest. Zhou Xuanji did not know that he had unintentionally scared off a group of assassins. After half an hour, all the people in the demon kingdom were escorted out. There were 1,800 people in total, and all of them were injured. Apparently they were tortured before this. When these people knew that sword god Zhou came to save them, they were all very excited. Some were even crying. There were all sorts of emotions. After they walked to his back, Zhou Xuanji stared at Tianhe Lion King and asked, "That's all?" Tianhe Lion King knelt on the ground and said anxiously, "Really?" His heart was beating like a drum. It should be all gone, right? As the ruler of the demon kingdom, he did not know how many people were imprisoned in the kingdom. "Do you dare to bring me in?" Zhou Xuanji asked calmly. Tianhe Lion King did not dare to reject, and immediately led Zhou Xuanji into the demon kingdom. Finally, Zhou Xuanji realized that there was really no one in the demon kingdom, so he left. Tianhe Lion King sent him to the city gate with a very humble attitude. Not long after Zhou Xuanji left, a young man ran over and knelt in front of him. "Sword god," he cried out indignantly, "please slaughter this demon kingdom. Take revenge for those who have died." With this, Tianhe Lion King's expression changed drastically and cursed in his heart. At the same time, he became anxious, afraid that Zhou Xuanji would turn around and attack him. Zhou Xuanji stared at the young man and said calmly, "The heavenly law is reincarnation, and the strong prey on the weak. You are already lucky that I saved you today. If you want to take revenge, you have to rely on yourselves. Don't think that they are despicable. When we humans eat livestock, have we ever thought that we are despicable as well? The powerful must strengthen themselves. Never place your hopes on others, or else you will encounter the same danger again in the future." After that, he left with his sword. He did not fly too quickly, in case Tianhe Lion King suddenly attacked. The young man was stunned and sighed in the end. Sword god Zhou was right. Instead of being resentful, it was better to become more powerful. He looked up and saw Tianhe Lion King looking at him furiously, as though he wanted to tear him into pieces. The young man was so frightened that he immediately turned around and ran away. Everyone who was saved began to run away from the demon kingdom. Tianhe Lion King looked at Zhou Xuanji's back and mumbled, "The heavenly law is reincarnation, and the strong prey on the weak. I admire you." With such a breadth of mind, it was no wonder that he was famous today. On the other side, Zhou Xuanji stood on the wind-cutter sword and sighed. The power of the ancient sword emperor lasted too short. Such a pity. He mumbled. Slaying demons was the responsibility of human cultivators. It was the same for demons to eat humans. From different standpoints, there was no such thing as absolute justice. If he could destroy this demon kingdom, his reputation would be even greater. Although he was confident that he could face Tianhou Lion King, the hundreds of thousands of demon soldiers were not just for show. If he encountered other powerful enemies during the great battle, he would really be dead. I will be 15 in half a month. I can look forward to a new legendary sword. Zhou Xuanji collected his thoughts and began his journey back. The sun was shining brightly in the sky, and there were no clouds in 10,000 miles. Jiang Shui, Beishao Wangjian, Huang Lianxin, the little black snake, and the two dragon eagles stood in a row. Their faces were pale. On the grassy field in front of them, Zhao Zongjian held his sword in his right hand. He knelt on one knee and panted continuously. There were 6 wounds on his chest, and blood was flowing out. His eyes were ferocious as he stared ahead. 10 meters away, a handsome young man dressed in golden robes looked at him with disdain. Undefeatable Zhao Zongjian with 3 sword moves. The one who could climb the ladder of the emperor? What a joke! No wonder you would become Sword God Zhou's slave. You are too weak. The young man in golden robes said with a smile. He held an iron fan in his hand, which was filled with steel needles. Beishao Wangjian said furiously, Han Shenbua, you are ranked first on Great Zhou's hero ranking board. You are dozens of years younger than Zhao Zongjian. How dare you say such a thing? The young man in golden robes was ranked first on Great Zhou's hero ranking board. Han Shenbua, whose name shook Great Zhou. He learned from the sanctum. Meng Tianlang challenged him dozens of times but never won. Han Shenbua laughed with contempt. I'm here for Sword God Zhou. Fortunately he is not here. If not, you will see him kneeling in front of me and begging for mercy. You will be even more furious. After that he burst out laughing. He did not take Beishao Wangjian and the others seriously at all. Chapter 99. Seeing Han Shenbua's arrogance, the crowd found it difficult to suppress their anger. Zhao Zongjian clenched his teeth and charged towards Han Shenbua with his sword in hand. However, before he could even touch Han Shenbua, he was sent flying by the fan. Han Shenbua's iron fan was obviously not an ordinary weapon. With a wave, a strong wind howled. Even Jiang Shui, Beishao Wangjian, and the others could not help but take out their instruments to defend themselves. Zhao Zongjian, who was already heavily injured, fell to the ground in a sorry state. Blood could not stop spurting out from his mouth. Too weak. Han Shenbua shook his head. His tone changed and he sneered. If Xiao Jinghong was here, he might stand a chance against me. Unfortunately, he has already fallen into the hands of the sword monarch of Great Zhou. You will never have the chance to see him again. No one said anything. They were all thinking about how to deal with him. Han Shenbua curled his lips and thought that it was really boring. He immediately kept his fan and asked, when is Sword God Zhou coming back? After I defeat him, I still have important matters to attend to. I don't want to waste time. Huang Lianxin snorted coldly and said, you speak as if you just happened to pass by. Aren't you just trying to step on our master to climb up? My master is number 1 on the honor roll of Great Zhou, while you are only number 1 on the hero roll. Don't you know how big the difference is? Hearing this, Han Shenbua's face instantly darkened. No matter how high one's ranking on the hero ranking board of Great Zhou was, it was only for the younger generation. On the other hand, the Great Zhou's reputation leaderboard was a competition with the rest of the world. The quality of the two could not be compared at all. Which of the people who shook the Great Zhou dynasty wasn't an expert who dominated an area? Humph. When your master returns, you will understand who is the real. Han Shenbua snorted, his tone laced with killing intent. Although he was ranked first on the Great Zhou hero ranking board, he had never entered the top 10 of the Great Zhou hero ranking board. The top 10 of the honor roll list had all accomplished earth-shattering feats. Although Han Shenbua was strong, he had never achieved much. If they were too strong, he couldn't beat them. He couldn't afford to offend those who were weak and famous. Xiao. Right at this moment, the sound of air being torn apart resounded, and it interrupted Han Shenbua. He subconsciously tilted his head, and the wind cutter sword swept past his ear. Clang! The wind cutter sword fell in front of Zhao Zongjian. Seeing this sword, Zhao Zongjian was instantly excited. It was the same for Jiang Shui and the others. What a sharp sword. Han Shinbo was secretly shocked. He immediately guessed who it was. He turned around and saw Zhou Xuanji walking over with his sword in hand. The white dragon golden robe fluttered in the wind. He had an extraordinary aura, like a sword immortal. Zhou Xuanji was expressionless. He looked at Han Shinbo with a murderous aura. "You are Sword God Zhou?" Han Shinbo asked, his eyes flashing. "You're finally here." He immediately introduced himself. "I am Zhou Xiongning." Zhou Xuanji came up to him with the 8-step sword lunge and slashed with the sky-sundering emperor sword. "Damn it!" Han Shinbo cursed in his heart. "I haven't finished speaking yet." He instinctively swung his iron fan to block. Clang! His right arm was numbed by the impact, and he was sent flying by Zhou Xuanji's slash. Zhou Xuanji said coldly, "You dare to bully my sword slave. Even if you are the heavenly emperor, you will be beaten up." With that, divine swords appeared around him out of thin air. Crimson Dragon Sword, Frost Wave Sword, Bloodbath Sword, Tiger Roar Sword, Swine Culling Sword, Golden Rock Sword, Heaven Sound Sword, Hell King Sword, Residual Image Sword, Thunderclap Sword, Formless Sword, Furious Ape Sword, Chicken Slaying Sword, Water Driving Sword, Falcon Sword, Magnetic Sword, Ghost Curse Sword, Bookcutter Sword. The 18 legendary swords were all pointed at Han Shinbo. He activated the 10,000 Sword Dragon incantation straightaway. Each legendary sword was surrounded by dragon-shaped sword chi. Just when Han Shinbo steadied himself, the 18 legendary swords charged at him. Even the Wind Cutter sword in front of Zhao Tsongjian rose from the ground and charged at Han Shinbo. This time, Han Shinbo was surrounded by 19 legendary swords. He was at a disadvantage immediately and was caught unprepared. The Crimson Dragon Sword released its dragon soul and surrounded Han Shinbo. The Thunderclap Sword exploded with lightning, forcing Han Shinbo to dodge to the left and right. The other legendary swords also showed their prowess. Zhou Xuanji looked at them and waved his right hand. The Bookcutter Sword flew back to his hand. Ordinary stone-grade legendary swords were too weak. They could be easily broken by Han Shinbo's iron fan. Han Shinbo's spell was exquisite. He was surrounded by so many legendary swords, but he was not injured. Looking at his posture, it was obvious that he was struggling. How can it be? These swords? Han Shinbo was shocked in his heart. He felt that he was surrounded by 18 sword cultivators with exquisite sword techniques. A few of the swords were of a higher grade than the iron fan in his hand. He became anxious immediately and dared not to let his guard down. Sword God Zhou was really powerful. Together with the 2 swords in Master's hand, he can control 20 swords at the same time? Beishao Wangjian opened his eyes wide and mumbled to himself. Zhou Xuanji did not usually practice sword techniques, so he did not expect his improvement to be so exaggerated. Jiang Shui was pleasantly surprised, while Huang Lianxin and the little black snake were petrified. Zhao Tsongjian looked at the battle with passionate eyes. He forgot about the pain in his body and only felt excited. Even though he worked hard to cultivate, the gap between him and Zhou Xuanji was still widening. Instead, he was filled with fighting spirit. Only a grandmaster in the sword's way like this was worth following. Zhou Xuanji stored the Bookcutter Sword into the supreme storage and came up to Han Shinbo with one step. He activated 6-path Sword Shadow. Han Shinbo felt even more pressured. He felt that his opponent was not just one Sword God Zhou. It was a group of Sword God Zhou. He almost collapsed. How could he fight like this? If his cultivation was not higher than Zhou Xuanji's, he might have been killed in an instant. The sky-sundering Emperor Sword, which weighed thousands of kilograms, slashed at him continuously. Every time he faced the sword head-on, his arm would feel numb from the impact. Looking closely, the web between his thumb and forefinger was already bleeding. 10 breaths later, Han Shinbo was injured. 20 breaths later, Han Shinbo's right hand was crippled. He had no choice but to wield the fan with his left hand. He cast all sorts of spells, but he still could not break free from the siege of the legendary swords. 30 breaths later, Han Shinbo's left hand was crippled too. When the iron fan left his hand, Zhou Xuanji and 6-path Sword Shadow activated the Trisource Vein Severing Sword together. The sword qi engulfed Han Xinbo. A painful cry came from his mouth and reverberated across the wilderness. His vital channels were severed, and he felt powerless instantly. 18 legendary swords pierced into his body from different directions, turning him into a porcupine. Thump! Han Xinbo knelt before Zhou Xuanji powerlessly. His body was covered in blood, his face was pale, and his eyes were lifeless. He mumbled, "Impossible. Impossible. How could there be such an insane sword cultivator in the world?" In front of the 10,000 sword dragon incantation, he felt so helpless. Zhou Xuanji raised the sky-sundering emperor sword and pressed its tip against Han Xinbo's forehead to prevent him from falling to the ground. Han Xinbo's forehead was pierced, and blood flowed down the blade. The scene froze. Han Xinbo, who was pierced with 18 legendary swords, knelt before Zhou Xuanji. His forehead was pressed against by the sky-sundering emperor sword, which made Zhao Zongjian and the rest breathe rapidly. They knew that Zhou Xuanji was more powerful than Han Xinbo, but they did not expect the gap to be so huge. It must be known that Zhou Xuanji had not activated Hell King possession yet. Too powerful. Zhou Xuanji looked at Han Xinbo with disdain and said, "Do you want to live or die?" The icy murderous aura made Han Xinbo shiver. "I want to live," he said instinctively. He was not even 100 years old, and he was ranked first on Great Zhou's hero ranking board. It was the highlight of his life. How could he die like this? He was not willing. "But I want you to die." Zhou Xuanji said calmly. He turned his right hand, and the tip of the sky-sundering emperor sword rotated like an electric drill, which made Han Xinbo's forehead feel excruciating pain. The pain made Han Xinbo more clear-headed. He endured the humiliation and said with gritted teeth, "As long as you spare my life, I am willing to be your slave. I will do whatever you ask me to do." Zhou Xuanji waved his left hand, and a brush, paper, ink and brush appeared before Han Xinbo. Han Xinbo's pupils contracted suddenly. His smile was bitter and forced. "Write down a condition that can move me, and put your handprint on it," Zhou Xuanji said slowly. "It would be a waste for the top rank on Great Zhou's hero ranking board to die like this." Han Xinbo raised his right hand with great difficulty, and it trembled continuously. Half a month later, Zhou Xuanji lay on the grass with a strand of weed in his mouth. Han Xinbo massaged his legs and asked with a flattering expression, "Master, this strength, how is it?" His acupoints were sealed by Huang Lianxin, and Zhao Zongjian cast a spell on him. He could no longer activate his spirit energy, and now, he was like a cripple. To survive, he could only struggle at death's door. Not only did he have to serve Zhou Xuanji, but he also had to listen to other people's orders. Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly, and did not speak. He was waiting. Because he was 15 years old today, Zhou Xuanji did not reply, and Han Xinbo could only focus on massaging his legs and shoulders. A while later, Zhou Xuanji sat up suddenly, and Han Xinbo immediately stopped in fear. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 15 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner obtained. Chapter 100. Analyzed that the sword owner has reached 15 years old. Gotcha started. Ding! Congratulations, the sword owner has obtained gold Tempest Calmer, silver living snake sword, 3 age-retaining pills, and a spirit-boosting bangle. Zhou Xuanji looked delighted. It was another 2 legendary swords. One of them was even gold tier. He immediately took out Gale Calmer and Living Snake sword, one in each hand. A few lines of small words appeared in front of him. Only he could see them. Sword name, Gale Calmer level. Gold description, Wind attribute divine sword. Able to resist storms and calm huge waves. Sword name, Living Snake sword level silver. Description, a divine sword made from a 10,000-year-old spirit snake. The blade of the sword retains the vitality of the spirit snake, and will actively entangle the enemy. Each of them had their own uses, and they all looked pretty good. Zhou Xuanji smiled satisfactorily, and looked at the 2 swords in his hands. The blade of the Tempest Calmer was wide and thick. There were many fine patterns on it, as if the wind was blowing on the blade. The hilt was engraved with fish scales, and it was not too heavy to hold. The living snake sword was a white sword. Its blade was like the belly of a snake. It was nearly 2 meters long, and shone with white light under the sunlight. Han Xianbua, who was squatting at the side, widened his eyes. He asked cautiously, "Master, do you still have 2 swords?" Back when he had fought Zhou Xuanji, these 2 swords were not among the many legendary swords that Zhou Xuanji had taken out. He subconsciously reached out to touch the living snake sword. At this moment, the living snake sword suddenly twisted and turned into a white snake, winding along his arm. The blade of the sword turned into a snake's mouth, biting Han Xianbua's abdomen. Han Xianbua's face instantly turned pale, and the pain in his abdomen almost made him cry out. He subconsciously held the blade of the living snake sword. His palm was in pain and quickly became bloody. He was so frightened that he let go. Zhou Xuanji's right hand trembled slightly, and the living snake sword shrunk back to its original state. Han Xianbua hurriedly retreated, his forehead covered in cold sweat. What a strange sword! If the sword had moved down a few centimeters. He shuddered, and didn't dare to continue thinking about it. Right now he couldn't use his spiritual energy, so he was like a mortal. Zhou Xuanji threw him a stare and said, "Who asked you to touch me? I almost crippled you. Are you scared?" The living snake sword was very intelligent. Not bad, not bad. When facing an enemy, the living snake sword might be able to give the enemy a fatal blow. Han Xianbua hurriedly knelt down and nodded like a woodpecker. He said in fear and trepidation, "I'm afraid. I won't dare to do it again." Zhou Xuanji ignored him. He stood up and stored the living snake sword into the supreme storage. Holding Tempest Calmer in his right hand, he walked to the top of the slope, faced the blazing sun, and swung his sword. There was no fancy sword technique, just an ordinary sword. As the blade fell, a strong gust of wind howled and gathered into a tornado that swept forward. Rumble, the entire hillside shook violently, and the nearby forest swayed unsteadily. Jiang Shui, Zhao Zongjian, and the rest turned around to look. They saw a 1,000-foot-tall tornado appearing behind the hill, sweeping up countless sand, dust, and fallen leaves. It was a spectacular sight. "Is that a sword technique?" Zhao Zongjian's eyes lit up. Northern Sword Valiant patted his shoulder and said, "Brother Zhao, stop looking. Stay calm." Zhao Zongjian woke up with a start. He was drenched in cold sweat, and quickly turned his head. "I can't think about it anymore. I need to learn the current sword technique first." Zhou Xuanji stored his sword, and the 100-foot-tall tornado dissipated. The dust was still flying, and it looked like a sandstorm. He turned around and walked down the hill. Han Xianbua came back to his senses from the shock. He quickly got up and walked to Zhou Xuanji's side. "Master, is there anything else you need me to do?" he asked carefully. Compared to his arrogant self half a month ago, he was like a completely different person. Zhou Xuanji waved his hand and said, "Go help the 3-eyed drought rodent catch some insects, and help the hegemon-scaled black dragon take a bath." Han Xianbua heard him, and his expression changed drastically. He wanted to say something but stopped. Zhou Xuanji ignored him, and walked straight to Jiang Shui. As he walked, he took out the spirit-boosting bangle. The bangle was like a metal hoop. It would absorb the surrounding spiritual qi automatically, and maintain a full state. Once he entered a battle, it would help him replenish his spirit energy. It was a good support enchanted artifact. He wore it on his right wrist, and took out an age-halting pill. Age-halting pill, as the name suggested, could make one look young forever. This pill was a perfect birthday present for Jiang Shui. After getting the age-halting pill, Jiang Shui really liked it, and even kissed Zhou Xuanji in front of everyone. Huang Lianxin was envious. Which woman doesn't want to stay young forever? Zhou Xuanji noticed her expression. He did not give her the age-halting pill immediately, but promised to give it to her in the future. It was all for Huang Lianxin to work hard in her cultivation and help him out. After that, he came to Zhao Zongjian's side and said, "Do you know where the sword monarch of Great Zhou is?" When Zhao Zongjian heard this, he immediately sheathed his sword and asked, "Master, are you thinking of?" He challenged the sword monarch of Great Zhou, and seized the sword noble. He immediately became excited. This was the Zhou Xuanji he knew. no matter who it was they dared to fight. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "Within a year, we will go to the sword monarch of Great Zhou to ask for him." Zhao Zongjian asked curiously, "Why a year? Not now." In his opinion, a year's time was not enough to make him much stronger. At least, it could not make up for the gap between him and the sword monarch. Zhou Xuanji smiled mysteriously. Since the sword monarch wants Jinghong, then let Jinghong learn from him for a year. When he comes back, he will teach Jinghong to us. Having heard this, Zhao Zongjian's eyes glowed. Good idea. He did not know where the sword monarch of Great Zhou was, so he promised that in the next year, he would find an opportunity to ask around and find the route. At the same time, the news about Sword God Zhou killing Zhongyou Dark Emperor was finally released. Within half a month, those who were saved spread the news after they returned. At first, not many believed it, but as more and more people spread the news, it spread like wildfire across Great Zhou. How powerful was Zhongyou Dark Emperor? A 6th-rank peak Great Demon King. It was equivalent to the pinnacle of Astral Infant, half a step into astral projection. Such a powerful being was killed so easily by Sword God Zhou. After Zhou Yalong's son, Zhou Zhongdao, returned to the Great Zhou royal city, he told everyone about it personally, which made the news even more popular. The whole world knew about it. Great Zhou royal city, in the Crown Prince's residence. Clank. The Crown Prince, Zhou Tianyu, flipped the table violently. "Is this true?" he asked with gritted teeth. The soldier kneeling at the door replied with a deep voice, "It should be true." Zhou Zhongdao also testified many times in the city. He claimed that Sword God Zhou was a grandmaster with an extraordinary demeanor. Sword God Zhou was his goal in the future. Zhou Tianyu heard and became even more furious. He cursed. That brat really brought shame to the royal family of Great Zhou. The person he hated the most was the second prince, Zhou Yalong. He did not have a good impression of his son. "Your Highness, there is news that Sword God Zhou will go to the Sword Monarch's pinnacle personally in a year to ask for Sword Noble Xiao Jinghong." The soldier continued. At this point his expression became strange. Sword God Zhou and the Sword Monarch were definitely the two pinnacles of the Sword's Way in Great Zhou. One appeared out of nowhere and dominated Great Zhou's reputation ranking. The other was well known for protecting Great Zhou and was recognized as the monarch of the Sword's Way. Ever since Sword God Zhou topped Great Zhou's reputation ranking, countless people were looking forward to the battle between him and the Sword Monarch. They did not expect this day to come. Zhou Tianyu's expression changed slightly and asked, "Is he really going to challenge the Sword Monarch?" If it was true, he would become Sword God Zhou's disciple. At that time, how would the emperor view him? But he thought about it again. If Sword God Zhou dared to challenge the Sword Monarch, he would definitely die. If Sword God Zhou was dead, would he still need to take him as his master? Chapter 101. Zhao Zongjian flew back on his sword and landed in front of Zhou Xuanji. He knelt down on one knee and cupped his fist. "Master, the news has been sent out." Zhou Xuanji, who was internalizing qi, nodded slightly. Zhao Zongjian asked doubtfully, "Why did this matter have to be spread out in advance? If he lost to the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou, wouldn't he become a joke to the world?" He didn't dare to say this out loud. Zhou Xuanji understood what he meant, so he opened his eyes and replied, "My identity, have you forgotten? The Empress of Great Zhou will definitely try her best to find trouble with me. The bigger this matter is, the more people it will attract. The Empress of Great Zhou is in the wrong. If she dares to deal with me in front of everyone, she probably doesn't want to keep her position anymore. At the same time, she can also attract Emperor Yan of Zhou's attention." Zhao Zongjian frowned. He understood a little, but felt that it was inappropriate. Zhou Xuanji let out a long breath and said, "To put it bluntly, I want everyone in the world to be my backer." The reason why the Great Zhou dynasty was able to establish itself in the Great Zhou dynasty was inseparable from those sects and families. What would the cultivation world think if the Empress of the Great Zhou dynasty attacked him? Doing so would chill the hearts of countless people. Of course, the Empress could also reveal Zhou Xuanji's identity, but it would be more difficult to do that. As the Empress, she actually dared to attack and kill a prince. She would become the laughing stock of the entire northern wilderness region. Zhao Zongjian finally understood and said in admiration, "Good plan." In this way, if Master reveals his true identity in the future, he might really have the power to fight for the position of Crown Prince. The title of number 1 on the Great Zhou honor roll was extremely valuable. This proved that within Great Zhou, the name of Sword God Zhou had reached a stage where everyone knew about him. Zhou Xuanji shook his head and said, "I'm not interested in becoming the emperor." Being the emperor might seem impressive, but in reality, it was extremely troublesome. How could he be as carefree as he was now? As for power, Zhou Xuanji always had a plan. These sword slaves were the power he wanted. If they were to be nurtured into world-renowned experts who could fight against thousands of troops, wouldn't that be a form of authority? To be in charge of someone else's money was a small power. Controlling people's lives was a great power. Controlling the lives of the people in the world was the power of the world. Zhao Zongjian looked at Zhou Xuanji with admiration. As a prince, Zhou Xuanji had such talent. The throne was not far from him, but he could still reject it. This was the magnanimity that a Sword Dao Grandmaster should have. 3 months later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to inner pellet level 4. He had to admit that the spirit assisting bangle was quite powerful. It could even help him in his cultivation. On this day, Zhao Zongjian came back to report the news. "Master, I'm afraid the Great Zhou dynasty will be in danger soon," Zhao Zongjian said with a solemn expression, causing the others to gather around. Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and said, "Speak." Zhao Zongjian immediately told him everything he knew. Recently, the northern wilderness region's demonic sect, Xinhao sect, had their eyes on Great Zhou. Xinhao sect colluded with the demonically fire sect in the Great Zhou dynasty and started to attack the dynasties near the Great Zhou dynasty. Not only that, but the demon monarch of Gulen was also on the move. 10 days ago, the southern Snow Kingdom's border was breached. Countless civilians were killed, and the kingdom was turned into a living hell. The Great Zhou dynasty had already sent reinforcements. In just one season, the flames of war had been ignited in the Great Zhou dynasty, and the country was in danger. Zhou Xuanji frowned and mumbled, "If the situation becomes critical and Great Zhou falls into chaos, it will not be good for us. The Empress will surely wait for an opportunity to make her move." Emperor Yan of Zhou's gaze was always on the entire Great Zhou. Han Xinbu's expression changed drastically and said, "Xinhao sect? That's one of the top 10 sects in the northern wilderness region. It can even shake an empire. With the help of the demon monarch of Gulen, Great Zhou is really in trouble." His teacher was a sanctum, which was located outside of Great Zhou. Naturally, he knew more about the northern wilderness region. Jiang Shui asked curiously, "Since Xinhao sect is so powerful, why did they attack Great Zhou? Aren't they afraid that both sides will suffer great losses?" Zhao Zongjian said, "I heard that the top prodigy of Xinhao sect, Huang Ming, was an isolated cultivation in a valley and was ambushed by Zhou Yalong. In the end, both of them left with severe injuries. Huang Ming bore a grudge and informed Xinhao sect's sect lord Ta Tianqian. Ta Tianqian was infuriated and declared war against Great Zhou." "So careless?" Zhou Xuanji asked with a strange expression. "Isn't this too childish?" But this also showed how important Huang Ming was to Xinhao sect. It also showed Ta Tianqian's character. He would seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Zhao Zongjian nodded and said solemnly, "Ta Tianqian is not weaker than Emperor Yan of Zhou." Han Xinbu swallowed his saliva and said, "Let's leave Great Zhou." The little black snake nodded. "I agree." Zhou Xuanji fell into deep thought and did not reply. Half a year later, Zhou Xuanji broke through to inner pellet level 5. With this speed, he could break through to Soul Fountain at 18 years old. Zhao Zongjian only broke through to inner pellet when he was 18 years old, but his talent was already comparable to Zhou Yalong's. 3 days later, Zhao Zongjian returned. His expression was more solemn than half a year ago. Everyone gathered around, wanting to hear more news. Zhao Zongjian came up to Zhou Xuanji and said with gritted teeth, "Bad news." Zhou Xuanji opened his eyes and asked, "What is it?" "Ta Tianxin's grandson, Ta Qixue, heard about your fame and declared that he wants to challenge you. If you don't go within 3 months, he will massacre the entire Southern Snow Kingdom." Now, the Southern Snow Kingdom is already occupied by Xinhao sect, and the population is less than 10% of what it used to be. "Master, if you go, you will most likely die. If you don't go, the fame that you built will go to waste." As he spoke, Zhao Zongjian clenched his fists. His face was filled with hatred. Jiang Shui opened her beautiful eyes wide and said, "This Ta Qixue guy, is he sick in the head? Did our Xuanji offend him?" Zhou Xuanji was speechless too. He was sitting at home, but the pot fell from the sky. Han Xinbo reminded him, "Ta Qixue is very talented. When he was at Inner Pellet, he killed someone at Soul Fountain. Now he might have broken through to Soul Fountain. You better not go." Of course, he did not really care about Zhou Xuanji. It was only because of the blood contract that he had to lower his head. Zhou Xuanji looked at Zhao Zongjian and asked, "Have you heard of the Hidden Sword sect?" Jiang Shui heard him and shuddered. She covered her chest with her hands. She immediately understood what Zhou Xuanji meant. Zhao Zongjian frowned and said, "Isn't that a small sect in the Southern Snow Kingdom? They are either dead or locked up in the Southern Snow Kingdom." Zhou Xuanji stopped talking and began to think. "Master, please reconsider. Xinhao sect is an evil sect. If you defeat Ta Qixue, can you escape?" Huang Lianqin reminded. "Even if you don't go, the world will only criticize you for a while. They will not really blame you. Great Zhou did not do anything. Why should you care?" Beishao Wangjian looked at Zhao Zongjian and asked, "Yeah, what about Great Zhou? Are they not going to do anything?" Zhao Zongjian sighed. "Great Zhou is in a terrible situation. Not long ago, Meng Tianlang led his army to the Southern Snow Kingdom and was utterly defeated. Even Meng Tianlang was locked up in the Southern Snow Kingdom and became a prisoner. If we bear with it, Great Zhou should be able to resolve its crisis in at most a few years. The other empires will not ignore it. If Great Zhou falls, the other empires will follow in its footsteps." Meng Tianlang knelt down too. The group fell into silence. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji looked up suddenly and said, 2 months later, we will depart for the Southern Snow Kingdom." With this, everyone's expression changed drastically. Chapter 102. 2 months later, Zhou Xuanji and the others packed their things and headed towards the Southern Snow Kingdom. On Ada's back, Jiang Shui asked Zhou Xuanji softly, "Xuanji, are you really not going to reconsider?" She knew why Zhou Xuanji wanted to go to the Southern Snow Kingdom. It was definitely because of Qiu Beili. But in her heart, Zhou Xuanji was more important than Qiu Beili. She did not want Zhou Xuanji to be killed. Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "I don't want to regret." Hearing this, Jiang Shui no longer tried to persuade him. "Wait for me outside the Southern Snow Kingdom." Zhou Xuanji tilted his head and said, the beauty behind him was the most important person in his life, and he did not want her to follow him into danger. Jiang Shui shook her head and said, "No matter where you go, I will accompany you. Even if I have to die, it will be the same in the past, the present, and the future." Zhou Xuanji felt a warmth in his heart, but he said unpleasantly, "Are you going to accompany me and be a burden?" Jiang Shui glared at him. "I'm currently at the 2nd level of the enlightening realm. I'm proficient in all 5 elemental spells and healing spells. I'm the healer that you've always mentioned. If you're injured, I can help you." As she spoke, she pinched Zhou Xuanji's waist and said coquettishly, "You dare to look down on me?" Zhou Xuanji curled his lip and said, "Can you be more gentle? You weren't like this when you were young. It's all because of your pampering." Jiang Shui blushed as she said in a low voice. She would only act like this to Zhou Xuanji. Towards others, she would be very polite and maintain a certain distance. Zhou Xuanji looked ahead with determination in his eyes and said, "I still want to dote on you for another 10,000 years. Don't worry, from this trip to Southern Snow, we will both come back alive." Jiang Shui's heart was filled with sweetness. She rested her chin on his shoulder, hugged his waist, and slowly closed her beautiful eyes. Southern Snow Kingdom. The once prosperous dynasty was filled with smoke, and every city had been reduced to ruins. In the center of the empire, only Monarch City remained standing. The city walls were filled with the figures of demonic cultivators. They were all wearing the same dark yellow robes with 2 large words imprinted on their backs. Xinhao. In Wangcheng, the number of Xinhao sect's demonic cultivators was uncountable. They could be found all over the streets. There were many corpses lying on the streets, and many prisoners were chained to the corners of the walls, unable to move. Chiu Bailey and a group of hidden sword sect cultivators were imprisoned on a dilapidated street. The iron chains on their bodies were connected to each other, with long nails piercing into the ground at both ends. Everyone's shoulder blades were pierced through, and their meridians were severed. They were like cripples. Chiu Bailey's clothes were tattered, his hair was messy, and his face was covered in scabs. He leaned against the wall and looked at the sky blankly. Even Meng Tianling was defeated. It won't be long before we are the ones to be beheaded. An old man muttered to himself in despair, causing the others around him to tremble. They had suffered all kinds of torture and humiliation. In the end, they couldn't escape death, so they might as well commit suicide. But who could truly face death? A hidden sword sect female disciple gritted her teeth and said, Ta Qishua has already announced that he wants to challenge Sword God Zhou. As long as Sword God Zhou wins against him, he will let us go. We still have hope. Sword God Zhou will surely come. When the other disciples heard this, their eyes lit up. The hidden sword sect practiced the sword, so everyone in the sect naturally looked up to Sword God Zhou. That's right. Sword God Zhou will definitely come. Sword God Zhou is kind and generous. He will surely not give up on us. He is not even afraid of the Empress of Great Zhou and the Sword Monarch of Great Zhou. Of course, he is not afraid of Ta Qishua. When the Sword God comes, he will surely defeat Ta Qishua. The hidden sword sect disciples were all excited and discussed softly. Chiu Bailey's body trembled. When he heard the word Sword God Zhou, he could not help but think of Zhou Xuanji. It was said that Sword God Zhou had a small physique, which was very similar to Zhou Xuanji. But no matter how devilish Zhou Xuanji was, he could not be this devilish, right? In just a short 10 years, he had already reached the stage where the whole world knew about him. It shouldn't be him. That kid was extraordinarily talented. He should be trying to break through to Inner Pellet. How could he kill Qin Qitsuan, Tai Yulong, and Zhongyou Dark Emperor? It's a pity that I cannot see you again in this life. Chiu Bailey sighed faintly. In his heart, he had already treated Zhou Xuanji and Jiang Shui as his grandchildren. When he was not cultivating, he would always miss the 2 kids. Of course, he only missed them and not worried. With the little devil Zhou Xuanji around, Jiang Shui would not be at a disadvantage. At this moment, a group of evil cultivators passed by with a prison cart. The people on both sides of the street looked up and saw a lonely silhouette sitting paralyzed in the prison cart. It was Meng Tianlang. At this moment, Meng Tianlang did not look as majestic as before. His hair was disheveled, his armor was removed, and his black shirt was tattered and stained with blood. He lowered his head, and his eyes were hollow, like a dead person. Did you see a dark horse? Your Great Zhou's second-ranked genius on the hero ranking board is nothing more than this. On the prison cart, a silhouette sat and laughed wildly. He was Ta Qishua. He looked like he was in his early 20s. He was handsome and devilishly handsome. His long hair was coiled under his silver crown, and he wore a luxurious red robe that looked like it was dyed with blood. Looking at him, the people on both sides of the street dared not to say anything. Ta Qishua bent his right leg and placed his right hand on his right knee. His posture was lazy, but his smile was a little maniacal. If Sword God Zhou dares to come, he will be my next human pet. I know that all of you are looking forward to Sword God Zhou's arrival. I am looking forward to it too. I can't wait to see him kneeling and begging for mercy. Ha ha ha, Ta Qishua said and laughed. He did not take Sword God Zhou seriously at all. Everyone on the street stared at him with red eyes. If looks could kill, Tachishua would have already been torn into pieces. The troops continued to advance. Tachishua planned to let all the captives see Meng Tianlong's miserable state. Ming! The dragon eagle's cry resounded through the sky. On Ah Big's back, Zhou Xuanji held the furious ape sword in his left hand. He also transferred his spirit-boosting bangle to his left hand. Even though he had been charging for 10 days, his hand did not feel sore at all. Compared to the last time, his cultivation had risen greatly, so he was naturally more relaxed. Zhao Zongjian carried the little black snake, Beishao Wangjian carried Han Ximbua, and Huang Lianxin rode on her sword alone. The group of people swept past the mountains like immortals. Zhao Zongjian turned around and said, "Master, we are still half a day away from the Southern Snow Kingdom. We will need another 2 days to reach the royal city of the Southern Snow Kingdom." Zhou Xuanji nodded and said, "After a while, we will stop and rest for a while before heading toward the Southern Snow Royal City at full speed." No one had any objections. 2 hours later, they landed on the plains to rest. As far as the eye could see, they could already see the outline of the Southern Snow Kingdom's border. Zhou Xuanji began to deploy the plan, and the group listened quietly. After he finished, Han Ximbua could not hold it anymore and said, "Can you unseal me? I'm completely useless now." The top rank of Great Zhou's hero ranking board was reduced to an ordinary person, following Zhou Xuanji, and the rest like this was suicide. Zhou Xuanji glanced at him and said, "If we can survive this battle, I will unseal you." Han Ximbua heard him and his face turned pale, and he broke out in a cold sweat. The little black snake came to his side and straightened his body. "Don't even think about it. Do you know how many years of torture I have suffered? You have not even been here for a year. Continue to wait." Chapter 103. The group rested for 2 hours, before continuing toward the Southern Snow Kingdom. The Southern Snow Kingdom's border custom was covered with corpses. There were human corpses and demon corpses. Blood dyed the ground red. It was hard to imagine how intense the battle must have been. Some demon corpses were as huge as a hill, which was a shocking sight. Even the border custom city wall had dozens of holes. Zhou Xuanji and the group flew past the border custom unobstructed. The tragic scene along the way made their hearts heavy. Only the little black snake was still cheerful. It looked around on small air's back with greedy eyes. The ground was filled with food. Occasionally, there were even living demons foraging for rotten meat. Desolate. Desolate. A murderous atmosphere pervaded the heavens and earth. Zhou Xuanji held the furious ape sword in his left hand, and the sky-sundering emperor sword in his right. He held the sword with both hands and looked ahead, ready to fight. Beishao Wangjian smiled and said, "This might be what Master said. You know there's a tiger on the mountain, but you still want to go there. Of course. Let's fight together and die together. Our lives will not be in vain." Zhao Zongjian smiled proudly with a heroic spirit. Huang Lianxin stared at him and said, "Don't say such depressing words. With Master around, we can all come out alive." "That's right. We will not die." Jiang Shui waved her fist and said excitedly. The group looked at each other and laughed. The tense atmosphere dissipated immediately. The Southern Snow Royal City. Tachishua sat on a tiger-skin chair in front of the palace gate and enjoyed the shoulder massage from 2 enchanting ladies. He held his wine cup and looked at the square below the stone stairs. 2 interpellate prisoners were fighting to the death. One of them had lost an arm, but was still fighting with gritted teeth. Between the 2 of them, only one could survive. At this moment, an evil cultivator from Xinhao sect came to Tachishua's back and said softly, "Young master, Sword God Zhou has entered the Southern Snow Kingdom." Having heard that, Tachishua immediately sat up straight. He smiled and said, "Very good. I want to see how powerful this guy, who ranked first on Great Zhou's reputation ranking, is. Pass my order. Do not stop Sword God Zhou." After the evil cultivator received the order, he turned into a wave of demonic qi and disappeared. Tachishua was elated. He immediately channeled his spirit energy and shouted, "Sword God Zhou has entered the Southern Snow Kingdom. By then, all of you can come and watch the battle. Watch how I defeat your Sword God Zhou." His voice spread throughout the city, causing all the captives to be moved. On one of the streets, under a tree, Zhang Tianjian and Zhang Ruyu were both excited. The two of them looked like beggars, disheveled and unkempt, with injuries all over their bodies. Senior Zhou is here. We're saved. Zhang Ruyu spoke incoherently. His body was trembling, and the iron chains were also shaking, making a ringing sound. Zhang Tianjian covered his mouth and whispered, "Lower your voice." The father and son turned around and saw that the other captives were also excited. Although Meng Tianlang was defeated, Sword God Zhou had never been defeated since his birth. Sword God Zhou is finally here. Sword God Zhou is indeed benevolent, but Xinhao sect sent so many evil cultivators. Even if he wins, can he escape? Indeed, Sword God Zhou shouldn't have come. Even if he loses, I have no regrets. There are so many heroes in Great Zhou. How many of them would dare to come and save us? God bless, Sword God Zhou, you must win. The captives were discussing on every street in the king's city. In a dungeon, Meng Tianlang also heard Ta Qishua's voice. He looked up slowly with a complicated expression in his eyes. Sword God Zhou, he sighed. Although he was defeated by Zhou Xuanji last time, he had seen through Zhou Xuanji's power. Beside Ta Qishue was someone who surpassed the astral infant stage. If Sword God Zhou came, he would most likely end up like him. Now he could only pray that Great Zhou would send a first-rank general as reinforcements. On the way to the southern Snow King's city, there were countless forests, and many people were hiding in them. Most of them were taking refuge. When they saw Zhou Xuanji and his companions flying across the sky fearlessly, they were all astonished. Who were these people? The dragon eagles roar across the sky. The sword god slays the thieves, and the sword king follows. It's Sword God Zhou and Northern Sword Valiant. Cries of astonishment came from a forest. Not only him, but the others also recognized Zhou Xuanji and his companions. Northern Sword Valiant had been in the Southern Snow Kingdom for decades, and many people had seen him before. Moreover, the two dragon eagles looked so majestic. It was easy to associate them with the world-renowned Sword God Zhou. The arrival of Sword God Zhou excited the people hiding in the forest. Now in the hearts of all the kingdoms under Great Zhou's banner, Sword God Zhou was a legendary figure. He was a legendary cultivator who could compete with the Sword Monarch for glory. His arrival might really save the Southern Snow Kingdom from its dire situation. Master, the Southern Snow King's city is 100 miles ahead. Zhao Zongjian stood on his sword and said with a deep voice. His eyes were filled with fervor. Before the battle began, he could feel his blood boiling. Zhou Xuanji nodded slightly, and the others prepared for battle. Only Han Xinbo was trembling. He cried in his heart, "If my spirit energy was not sealed, why would I be so panicked?" He was the top genius on Great Zhou's hero ranking board. A short while later, Zhou Xuanji could already see the city walls of the Southern Snow Kingdom. He immediately stood up and stepped on Big's head with his left foot. He held his sword with both hands and channeled his spirit energy. Ta Qishue, I Sword God Zhou am here. His voice swept across all directions and spread across the entire Southern Snow King's city. The entire city was in an uproar. Sword God Zhou really came. Qiu Bailey heard his voice and fell into a daze. Zhou Xuanji's voice was already changing, but he still felt a sense of familiarity. Boom! A horrifying demonic chi exploded from the center of the city like a long black pillar. The thunderclouds gathered and connected the heavens and the earth. It was a majestic sight. Ha ha ha! Sword God Zhou, do you dare to come in and fight me? If you can defeat me, I will let everyone in this city go. Ta Qishua's arrogant laughter came from the city. He sounded extremely excited. As the grandson of Xinhao sect's sect lord, he was equally talented. Even Meng Tianlang was not his match in a one-on-one fight. Zhou Xuanji said this and leaped up. You guys wait here. I will enter the city alone. The wind cutter sword appeared under his feet out of nowhere and flew toward the Southern Snow King's city. Jiang Shui was extremely anxious. She held the flaming fan tightly in her right hand. The others were the same. Zhou Xuanji tried to persuade them for a long time. They only agreed after he threatened them. If all of them entered the city, they would be like trapped beasts in a cage. Soon, Zhou Xuanji flew past the city wall. The evil cultivators looked up at him. He doesn't look that powerful. The rumors are true. The swords in his hands are not ordinary. That sword is so majestic. Could it be a level 6 enchanted artifact? TSK. This brat is really seeking death. Take a guess. How long can he live? The evil cultivators discussed among themselves, and did not take Zhou Xuanji seriously. To them, Zhou Xuanji was a fool to come alone. If such a fool did not die, who would? Chapter 104. After entering the city, Zhou Xuanji directly flew towards the pillar of demonic qi. The furious ape sword in his left hand was still accumulating power, ready to strike at any time. After entering the city, the captives and demonic cultivators on the streets all raised their heads to look at him. The captives were excited, but the demonic cultivators were disdainful. Father, it was really Sword God Zhou. He's here. Zhang Ruyu was so excited that he jumped up and down on the spot, ignoring the injuries on his body. Zhang Tianjian looked at Zhou Xuanji and fell into a trance. Back then, if he had taken Zhou Xuanji as a sword slave, perhaps things would have been different. Unfortunately, he could not abandon everything he had at that time. But now he had lost everything. In retrospect, it was really a joke. The other side. Qiu Bailey widened his eyes and stood up while trembling. Zhou Xuanji did not notice him. His eyes were fixed on the long pillar of demonic qi in front of him. It's really him. He's Sword God Zhou. Qiu Bailey's expression was complicated. His eyes revealed shock, disbelief, surprise, worry, fear, and all sorts of other emotions. He had long since guessed that Zhou Xuanji's name would spread across the world. But he didn't expect this day to come so soon. Now he could only look up to him from the crowd. However, he was also worried about Zhou Xuanji. This situation was almost a dead end, and he was afraid that something would happen to Zhou Xuanji. In the center of the city, on the square in front of the palace, Ta Qishue stood on a long pillar of demonic qi, wantonly declaring his power. Thousands of Xinhao sect's demonic cultivators were spread out at the edge of the square, on top of the high walls and palaces, surrounding the square so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. A scarlet-robed old man stood in front of the palace's entrance. His figure was tall, his hair was white, and his eyes were sunken. He seemed extremely gloomy and cold like a venomous snake. He was an elder of the Xinhao sect. His name was Xiahou Gongji, and his abilities were unfathomable. He had watched Ta Qishue grow up. No matter where Ta Qishue went, he would follow him closely. Inner pellet stage level 5? What a joke. Xiahou Gongji shook his head and laughed. Young master had been looking forward to it so much, but it turned out that it was just a paper tiger. After Ta Qishue saw Zhou Xuanji, he shook his shoulder, and the long pillar of demonic qi exploded, turning into a black mist that spread across the square. Thud! Zhou Xuanji landed, and the wind cutter sword levitated above his head. The tip of the sword was pointed at Ta Qishue. Zhou Xuanji's expression did not change, even when he was surrounded by thousands of evil cultivators. You are Sword God Zhou. He was born with a good body. Didn't they say you're only as tall as a child? Ta Qishue looked at Zhou Xuanji curiously, and asked in amazement as he sized him up. Zhou Xuanji replied calmly, "That's because I grew up. Grown up. Were you really a child?" Ta Qishue was even more curious. He rubbed his chin and pondered. Zhou Xuanji raised his brow and asked, "If I defeat you, will you really keep your promise?" Ta Qishue smiled and said, "Xinhao sect is not an evil sect without principles. As long as you defeat me, all the captives in the city can leave." He waved his right hand, and two fiendish cultivators leapt out from behind the high wall on the left side of the plaza. They carried a prisoner cart to the ground, and Meng Tianlang was imprisoned inside. Seeing Meng Tianlang's miserable appearance, Zhou Xuanji slightly narrowed his eyes. Meng Tianlang was also stunned, and lowered his head in shame. Back then, he had missed his appointment with Zhou Xuanji, and the person he feared seeing the most was Zhou Xuanji. He did not expect Ta Qishue to be so vicious that he actually escorted him out. It was worse than killing him. Do you know him? He's ranked second on Great Joe's hero ranking board. He brought an army to rescue us, but he's the only one left alive. Don't you think it's funny? Tachishua pointed at Meng Tianlang and laughed. His laughter sounded insane, and in Zhou Xuanji's eyes, it sounded like he was sick. Zhou Xuanji raised his right hand and pointed the sky-sundering emperor sword at Tachishua. Don't talk so much. If you want to fight, let's fight. He was still holding the furious ape sword in his left hand and had been accumulating energy. He had the confidence to deal with Tachishua, but to guard against the powerful cultivators from Xinhao sect, he had never stopped accumulating energy. Tachishua heard him and laughed even more wildly. He opened his hands, and 2 curved blades appeared in his hands. The 2 blades were filled with an evil qi. The blades were blood red, as though they were just drawn out from a pool of blood. With the blades in his hands, he walked toward Zhou Xuanji. If you lose, you will become my human pet, just like him. Tachishua laughed coldly and turned into a ferocious demon in an instant. Demonic qi surrounded his body, and his fiendish aura soared into the sky. As soon as he finished speaking, he dashed forward. In the blink of an eye, he came up to Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji leaped up and slashed down furiously with the sky-sundering emperor sword in his right hand. The blades clashed, and the horrifying force caused Tachishua's arms to tremble a little. Such a heavy sword. Tachishua was shocked in his heart. He turned around and slashed horizontally with both blades. Zhou Xuanji flew into the air. He moved his right hand quickly and activated the vibrant raindrop sword. Countless sword stars descended. Tachishua swung his blades and deflected all the sword stars. Ding! 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 The sword stars landed on the blades, and there was a sound of metal clashing. Great sword technique. Tachishua finally understood that the title of Sword God Zhou was not just for show. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji came to his back with the 8-step sword lunge. 6-path sword shadow. Tachishua was surrounded in an instant. He instinctively spun his body, and his blades swept up a bloody gale. Zhou Xuanji and the 6-path sword shadow used the Soul Eater slash together. The black sword qi engulfed Tachishua in an instant and soared into the sky like a black tornado. This scene shocked the thousands of evil cultivators. The Xinhao sect's elder, Xiahou Gongji, frowned and mumbled, "Such a domineering sword technique. What is this guy's background?" Amethyst legendary sword, and an earth-grade advanced tier sword technique. The destructive power was so powerful that the ground of the square shook violently. Tachishua leaped out from the black sword qi quickly. His robe was torn, and he was covered in blood. After a somersault, he landed steadily and knelt on one knee. He looked up. His face was covered in blood, and his eyes were wide open. He was obviously shocked. "What sword technique is this?" he asked with gritted teeth. He was already injured in the first exchange of blows. Thousands of eyes stared at him, which made him want to find a hole to hide in. Meng Tianlang, who was in the prison carriage, was stunned. The 6-path sword shadow dissipated. Zhou Xuanji pointed his sword at Tachishua and said with an indifferent expression, "Soul Eater slash, specialized in slaying evil spirits." After that, legendary swords appeared around Zhou Xuanji out of thin air. Crimson Dragon Sword, Frost Wave Sword, Bloodbath Sword, Tiger Roar Sword, Swineculling Sword, Golden Rock Sword, Heaven Sound Sword, Hell King Sword, Residual Image Sword, Thunderclap Sword, Formless Sword, Chicken Slaying Sword, Water Driving Sword, Falcon Sword, Magnetic Sword, Ghost Curse Sword, Bookcutter Sword, Storm Calmer, Living Snake Sword. All of them pointed their swords at Tachishua. Zhou Xuanji stepped forward, and the legendary swords followed closely behind. Tachishua's face was extremely unsightly. He slashed the ground with both of his blades and leaped up with the recoil. A bloody gale blew, and it looked like a gigantic blood-colored bat was entrenched on his body. Zhou Xuanji held his sword in his right hand and thrust it toward the sky. All the legendary swords followed suit. They were all ranged sword propelling. Tachishua's expression changed drastically in midair. He instinctively crossed his blades in front of him to block. Clang! 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 The legendary swords clashed with his blades consecutively and sent him flying into the sky. In the blink of an eye, He was 90 meters above the ground. Many captives on the street saw this. They looked up and craned their necks. That's Tachishiwa. It's that devil. Such beautiful swords. Could they be Sword God Joe's treasured swords? So domineering. Sword God Joe lives up to his name. Doesn't he only have 9 legendary swords? Not only that. Look carefully, there are at least 15 of them. So powerful. Cries of astonishment came from every street, one after another. The legendary swords with different radiances charged at Tachishiwa, aiming to pierce him out of the sea of clouds. The scene was shocking. So powerful. Chiu Bailey opened his eyes wide. Although he did not see Zhou Xuanji's silhouette, it was obvious that Tachishiwa was at a disadvantage. How powerful is that little demon now? Chapter 105. Damn it! Tachishiwa resisted with all his might, but there were too many godly swords. Each of them had their own special abilities, and they consumed his spiritual power crazily, making him suffer. His gaze passed through all of the swords, and saw Zhou Xuanji standing on the ground, looking up at him. This scene infuriated him. He was the grandson of Xinhao Sect's sect leader. How could he be in such a sorry state? He immediately bit his lips, causing blood-colored scales to appear on his cheeks. The demonic aura surrounding his body increased exponentially. There was a loud bang. All of the legendary swords were knocked away by him, and he paused for a moment before rushing towards Zhou Xuanji. It was like a blood-red arrow falling from the sky. His target was Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji smiled and laughed loudly. I was wondering how capable you were. Just as if you dare to challenge me? Even a sparrow dares to spy on the height of a swan? His voice reverberated throughout the southern Frost Royal City, causing everyone to go into an uproar. Sword God Joe had the upper hand? After he spoke, Zhou Xuanji used the Soul Eater slash again and slashed. The 10,000-kilogram amethyst godly sword contained terrifying power. The surface of the ground crumbled and 3 black sword chi rushed towards Tachishiwa like sharp claws. Tachishiwa's dual blades slashed forward. The blades crisscrossed, and the blood-colored bat on his body transformed into a crescent blade chi that swept out. 2 powerful forces collided with each other, sweeping up countless gravel and shaking the plaza and surrounding high walls. Xiao! Xiao! Swoosh! The godly swords drew a perfect arc in the sky and charged towards Tachishiwa again. Tachishiwa's expression changed and he cursed. Shameless! How were they supposed to fight? At this moment, he felt the same as Han Shenhua. It felt like he was fighting a group of Sword God Zhou. He immediately dodged, narrowly dodging the attacks of the divine swords. Zhou Xuanji let go of the sky-sundering Emperor sword and raised his right hand. With the Hell King sword in hand, he entered Hell King possession straightaway. His left arm trembled slightly. Using the Nether King's possession while accumulating power was a bit too much. Of course, it was just barely. He leaped up and transformed into the King of Hell, charging towards Tachishiwa. All the divine swords followed closely behind. Their light gathered together and condensed into a 7-colored glow that illuminated the heavens. Zhou Xuanji immediately entered the Soul Eater slash's swordwell mode, and his aura grew tremendously. Tachishiwa opened his eyes wide. In his eyes, Zhou Xuanji was like a sheep that turned into a ferocious tiger. Zhou Xuanji's viciousness made him shudder. Zhou Xuanji leaped into the air even higher than him and charged toward him. Little brat from the devil cult. This sword. I'll make you understand why you've lost. Zhou Xuanji gave a loud cry and ferociously stepped on the thunderclap sword with his right foot. Lightning surrounded his body as he used the 8-step sword lunge. The lightning could stimulate his muscle cells, making him much faster than before. Before Tachishiwa could react, his chest was penetrated by Zhou Xuanji's Hell King sword. Blood splattered everywhere. Tachishiwa's hideous expression froze. His pupils twitched violently, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. How could there be such a fast sword? How dare you? With a loud cry, Xiahou Gongji charged toward Zhou Xuanji like the wind. One by one, the divine swords flew towards him. The Crimson Dragon Soul, Cold Waves, Lightning, and others were so powerful that they were about to drown him. He was extremely agile and dodged them easily. However, the living snake sword coiled around his ankle and slithered upward like a spirit snake. The sky-sundering emperor sword followed. It weighed thousands of kilograms and was unstoppable. Xiahou Gongji slammed the sky-sundering emperor sword away, but at the same time, his right palm felt slightly numb. At the same time, the living snake sword was about to bite his neck. He grabbed it with his left hand and flung it away. Stop! Zhou Xuanji's loud cry came and stopped Xiahou Gongji in shock. The thousands of evil cultivators nearby took out their enchanted artifacts and prepared for battle. They saw Zhou Xuanji standing in the ruins with his right foot on Ta Qishua's chest. The Hell King sword was still stuck in Ta Qishua's chest, and blood flowed down the blade. His right hand was pressing on the Hell King sword's hilt. If Xiahou Gongji dared to come near, he would surely kill Ta Qishua on the spot. Silence. The entire place was silent. All the evil cultivators were in disbelief. Brat, do you know what will happen to you if you kill him? Even Great Zhou cannot protect you. Xiahou Gongji squinted his eyes and threatened with a cold voice. Zhou Xuanji looked at him sideways and said, he lost. Release all the captives in the city. For every captive missing, I will chop off one of his arms. Xiahou Gongji heard him, and his face turned dark immediately. Meng Tianlang, who was in the prison carriage, was dumbfounded. Zhou Xuanji really won, and he won in such a dominating manner. Ta Qishua, who was standing under Zhou Xuanji's feet, looked at the sky with a blank expression. He could not believe that he was defeated, and he was utterly defeated. How could it be? His cultivation only seemed to be at the inner pellet stage. That slash just now. At this moment, Ta Qishua's pride and self-esteem were all shattered. Zhou Xuanji immediately cried out, Ta Qishua lost. Release all the captives in the city, or else I will chop off his head. With his spirit energy fully channeled, his voice traveled across the entire city. Boom! The entire city was in an uproar. Sword God Zhou won? So fast. Mighty. This is the unparalleled Sword God Zhou. Invincible. Too powerful. How long has it been? I told you. Ta Qishua is just a clown. He can't even withstand a single blow from a truly powerful cultivator. It seems that Meng Tianlang is not just a little bit weaker than Sword God Zhou. He still went back on his words. From today onwards, Sword God Zhou is my faith. All the captives were excited. The sound of metal chains shaking could be heard in every street. The evil cultivators who were guarding the captives were even more stunned. They knew how powerful Ta Qishua was. Astral infant stage. And he was defeated so quickly? And under the protection of Elder Xiahou. How could he be threatened by Sword God Zhou? At this moment, Sword God Zhou's image in their hearts grew higher and higher. Zhang Tianjian and Zhang Riyu's eyes were filled with tears. Father, Sir Sword God Zhou is invincible. He's really invincible. Zhang Riyu held Zhang Tianjian in his arms and jumped up and down excitedly, like a child. Zhang Tianjian was excited too, but he felt more regret. If only he could become Sword God Zhou's sword slave. What kind of serendipity would that be? On the other side, Qiu Bailey was stunned on the spot. It was as though he was in a different world from the excited captives around him. He really won. Qiu Bailey mumbled to himself. Suddenly, a surreal thought appeared in his mind. Could it be that Zhou Xuanji came for him? It shouldn't be. Maybe he has already forgotten about me, a terrible old man. Qiu Bailey began to worry about his gains and losses. The evil cultivators around him began to hesitate whether to release the captives or not. On the ruins of the square, Zhou Xuanji pressed down with his right hand, and Ta Qishua cried out in pain. Ah! The Hell King sword was a gold-grade legendary sword. It was so sharp that it could cut through his bones easily. Zhou Xuanji looked at Xiahou Gongji and said coldly, "If you don't say something, your young master will suffer a fate worse than death." Zhou Xuanji did not trust the evil cultivators. Ta Qishua's words were reserved. If he won, he would release all the captives in the city. Even if he took it seriously, he did not say that he would let Zhou Xuanji go. Xiahou Gongji's eyes were filled with blood. His murderous aura soared into the sky. "Release the captives!" He roared furiously with a deep voice. His voice resounded across the entire city. All the Xinhao sect's evil cultivators cut off their chains and released the captives. Chapter 106. Outside the southern snow royal city, Huang Lianqin said excitedly, Master 1. Jiang Shui, Zhao Congjian, and Beishao Wangjian were also very excited. Han Shimbo was a little dazed. Facing a group of powerful cultivators from Xinhao sect, could Zhou Xuanji still capture Tachi Xue? There was no justice in this world. The little black snake coiled on a large rock and said with a complacent smile, I've said it before. This kid isn't a fish in the pond. He's a true dragon and won't die here. You guys just don't believe me. Weren't you scared to death just now? Jiang Shui snapped. The little black snake was even more pleased with himself. That was just to scare you. Your psychological endurance is really bad. Beishao Wangjian could not stand it anymore. He rushed over and gave it a kick, but it nimbly dodged it. I'm no longer the earthworm from back then. You want to kick me? The little black snake raised its head and said arrogantly. Huang Lianqin said, Let's starve it for 10 days. Jiang Shui. Not enough 20 days. Zhao Congjian. 1 month rounded up. The little black snake was speechless. Han Shimbo sighed and sat on the ground. It seemed that it would be difficult for him to escape from Zhou Xuanji's clutches. At this time, captives were fleeing from Royal City in a panic. And Zhou Xuanji was still facing off against Xiahou Gongji. He removed the possession of the Netherworld King, his left arm trembling non-stop. Xiahou Gongji noticed this scene. Kid, looks like you used some kind of secret technique and can't hold on much longer, right? Xiahou Gongji sneered. His smile was extremely cruel. Meng Tianlang, who was in the prison cart, shuddered. It was that sword. He thought back to the terror of battling Zhou Xuanji years ago. Zhou Xuanji pointed the furious ape sword at Meng Tianlang and said, And him. Let him go too. Xiahou Gongji immediately waved his hand. The 2 fiendish cultivators in front of the prisoner carriage opened the door and removed the chains on Meng Tianlang's body. To prevent Ta Chi Xue from exploding, the bloodbath sword had already pierced into his palm and was absorbing his blood to help Zhou Xuanji recover his stamina. Zhou Xuanji's gaze never left Xiahou Gongji. This was because this person's cultivation had surpassed the nascent soul realm. If he was slightly distracted, he would definitely be killed by Xiahou Gongji with lightning speed. He looked calm, but he was actually extremely nervous. Do not panic. The more critical the moment, the calmer he had to be. At the very least, he had to look confident. Zhou Xuanji smiled, as though he had Xiahou Gongji in his grasp. Xiahou Gongji frowned and thought to himself, could it be that this brat still has a trump card? Meng Tianlang walked forward with difficulty. When he reached the gate, he looked back at Zhou Xuanji. Zhou Xuanji looked so domineering when he stomped on Qi Shui, which made people feel fascinated. He murmured, Thank you. If you can leave this place alive, I will become your slave. With that, he turned around and walked through the door, his figure quickly disappearing. Let me go. If you kill me, don't even think about leaving. Ta Chi Xue gritted his teeth. He could feel that the bloodbath sword was sucking his blood. If this continued, he would die of blood exhaustion. Zhou Xuanji did not look at him, but stared at Xiahou Gongji and said, If you are obedient, I will not kill you. Ta Chi Xue was so angry that his chest felt stuffy, causing blood to gush out of his wound even faster. Divine swords floated around the 2 of them. As long as Xiahou Gong dared to get close, the divine swords would fall and turn Ta Chi Xue into a sieve. Time ticked by. Zhou Xuanji's left arm trembled even more violently. The battle just now messed up his rhythm of charging up energy. His blood flow was not smooth, and his internal organs felt uncomfortable. Half an hour later, Xiahou Gongji could not help but persuade him again. If you give up now, Xinhao sect can recruit you. With your talent, no matter where you go, you will be treated well. Zhou Xuanji said expressionlessly, I will only follow my sword. If you join Xinhao sect, you can lead hundreds of thousands of demonic disciples. I only want to lead my sword. If you join Xinhao sect, You can learn supreme energy techniques. I only want to learn sword techniques that are suitable for my sword. Other than swords, what else do you know? Xiahou Gongji almost lost his composure. Why is this kid so stubborn? Does he really want to fight to the death with Xinhao sect? Zhou Xuanji calculated the time silently. The king's city was huge, and the injured captives needed time to escape. He did not expect everyone to escape, but he wanted to save as many as he could. Another half an hour passed. Zhou Xuanji's left arm trembled violently. He knew that he could not wait any longer. He immediately lifted Tachishua up with his sword, and Tachishua howled in pain. What are you trying to do? Xiahou Gongji cried out with a deep voice. Tens of thousands of evil cultivators gathered around him, and were ready to pounce on Zhou Xuanji at any time. After I leave the city, I will let him go, Zhou Xuanji said calmly. After that, he leaped up lightly, and the wind cutter sword landed under his feet. He flew out of the king's city. Xiahou Gongji chased after him, and tens of thousands of evil cultivators followed closely behind. Zhou Xuanji did not fly too fast. He scanned the streets below him, while keeping an eye on Xiahou Gongji, who was behind him. At a glance, other than the corpses in the southern Snow King's city, the captives had all escaped. Maybe there were still people hiding in the dark, but Zhou Xuanji could not care so much. After half a cup of tea's time, Zhou Xuanji came to the city wall with Tachishua. Enough! If you go any further, I will kill you at all costs, Xiahou Gongji cried out with a deep voice. They were Xinhao sect, and they were threatened by someone. Wouldn't they become a laughing stock if word got out? Far away, Jiang Shui, Zhao Zongjian, and the rest also noticed Zhou Xuanji's silhouette, and they became even more anxious. Let's not get close, lest we drag our master down, Zhao Zongjian reminded. Even if they attacked together, they would still be cannon fodder. The group nodded. The little black snake also looked at Zhou Xuanji anxiously. At this point, he did not want Zhou Xuanji to die here. Only by following Zhou Xuanji could he live a good life. He might break through to 6th rank someday. At this moment, Zhou Xuanji suddenly threw Tachishua toward Xiahou Gongji and leaped up. Seeing this, Xiahou Gongji's eyes were filled with a horrifying murderous intent. He wanted Zhou Xuanji dead. You dare to fool me? I will crush your bones and scatter your ashes. Xiahou Gongji roared furiously, and leaped up to catch Tachishua, who was severely injured. Zhou Xuanji, who was in the air, raised the furious ape sword and slashed. Bastards! Go to hell! The furious ape sword, which was charged up, let out an earth-shattering roar. The captives who were escaping looked back. They saw a gigantic ancient ape formed by strong winds above Zhou Xuanji's head, roaring toward the sky. Shocking. Domineering. Everyone was stunned and opened their mouths wide instinctively. The sword Qi, which was hundreds of meters long, swept down and widened rapidly. It crushed the majestic city wall straight away. The entire king's city shook violently. The sword Qi collapsed buildings one after another. Before this horrifying destructive power, everything was like a piece of paper. Tens of thousands of evil cultivators were blinded by the sword gleam, and were drowned by dust immediately. Oh no! Just when Xiahou Gongji caught Tachishua, before he could move, the sword Qi landed. Boom! The city wall exploded and dust billowed up. Broken rocks and wooden pillars flew in all directions, as though they were going to pierce through the sky. The entire wasteland shook, as though an earthquake was coming. Even Zhou Xuanji vomited blood from the impact of the explosion. His body was sent flying backward. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew far away. All the legendary swords flew toward him swiftly, and disappeared into the supreme storage. Save our master! Zhao Zongjian cried out, and took the lead to fly on his sword. Beishao Wangjian carried Han Shenbua, and followed closely behind. Jiang Shui rode on a big, while Huang Lianxin and the little black snake rode on small air. The group moved quickly without any hesitation. At the same time, the southern Snow King's city was swept by the furious ape sword Qi. A quarter of the city turned into ruins. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.